Ladies and gentlemen, let us all rise for the arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 31st session of the Senate and the third regular session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Let us pause for a minute of silent prayer. The Secretary may please call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
JB, kasama? With 15 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have visitors in the gallery from the National Confederation of Irrigators Association, headed by National President Silvestre Bonto, as well as the ANIB, Philippine Farmers Advisory Group, and Philippine Corn Grain Group. And guests of Senator Coco Pimentel, the Holy Cross High School from Camp Phillips, Bukidnon, are here with us today. Oh, may kababayans, mayong hapon. Mr. President, I move that we defer approval of the Journal of the 30th Session, Tuesday, October 9, 2018, for a later hour. I so move.
Is there any objection? There being none, the approval is deferred.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Reference of Business Committee Report. Committee Report number 491, submitted jointly by the Committees on Local Government and Finance on Senate number 1770, introduced by Senator Sani Angara, entitled An Act to Enhance Public Financial Management in Local Government Units by amending certain provisions in Republic Act 7160, otherwise known as the Local Government Code of 1991, recommending its approval with amendments, sponsor Senator Sani Angara.
To the calendar for ordinary business. We have additional reference of business.
Additional reference of business. Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 October 2018, it designated Representative Zamora, Vice Representative Nograles as contrary to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes on House number 7449, entitled An Act Appropriating the Sum of 1,161,710,000 pesos as supplemental appropriations for FY 2018 and for other purposes.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 October 2018, it designated Representatives Velarde Jr., Benitez, Lacson, Salo, Belmonte, Abayan III, and Paduano as conference to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 6775 entitled, An Act Creating the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, defining its mandate, powers, and functions, and appropriating funds therefore in anticipation of the approval by the Senate of its counterpart Senate Number 1578.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 October 2018, it designated Representatives Sakdalan, Go, Pichay Jr., Santos Recto, and Salon as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 2158 entitled, An Act Rationalizing and Expanding the Powers and Duties of the Social Security Commission in the Social Security System, further amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 1161 as amended by Republic Act Number 8282, otherwise known as the Social Security Act of 1997, in anticipation of the approval by the Senate of its counterpart Senate Number 1753.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter of the from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 9 October 2018, it designated Representatives Paganiban Jr., Garin, Lobregat, Sagarbaria, Lagman, Tan, Chavez, Escudero, Yap, Suarez, and Andaya Jr. as conference to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions on House Number 5745 entitled, An Act Establishing the Coconut Farmers and Industry Development Trust Fund and providing for its management and utilization, and Senate Number 1233 entitled, An Act Creating the Coconut Farmers and Industry Trust Fund, providing its management and utilization and for other purposes.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Resolution, PS Resolution Number 915 entitled, Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation into the recent spate of killings during police operations in Metro Cebu, with the end in view of ensuring that officers of the Philippine National Police abide by the operating procedure, maintain respect for human rights, and uphold the rule of law in the discharge of their duties, introduced by Senators De Lima, Aquino IV, Ontiveros, Pangilinan, Trillanes IV, and Drilon.
Referred to the Committees on Public Order and Justice.
Committee reports. Committee report number 492, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation on Senate number 2064, with Senators Gordon, De Lima, and Pimentel III as authors thereof, entitled, An Act Amending Section 15 of Republic Act number 8436 as amended by Republic Act number 9369, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 100 and 1893, sponsor Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 493, submitted jointly by the Committees on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes on Senate number 1784, introduced by Senator Pimentel III, entitled, An Act Strengthening the System of People's Initiative and Referendum, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 6735, otherwise known as an act providing for a system of initiative and referendum and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval without amendment, sponsor Senator Aquilino Coco Pimentel III.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 494, submitted jointly by the Committees on Science and Technology, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation and Finance on Senate number 1240, introduced by Senator Paolo Benigno Bam Aquino IV, entitled, An Act Upgrading the Position of the Provincial Science and Technology Officer into the Provincial Science Director in the Department of Science and Technology, amending Republic Act number 6959, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, recommending its approval with amendments. Sponsor Senator Paolo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
The calendar for ordinary business. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have in the gallery as well today councilors from Laguna, San Pablo, Laguna, Councilor Carla Adahar, and John Adahar, the URCC welterweight champion. And we also have with us from the DOH family, Secretary Eduardo Duque, Francisco Duque, and the other secretaries and members of the DOH are here with us. Well, it's timely, Mr. President, that the members of the DOH are here with us today because good news. So we are in receipt of the certification, Mr. President, from Malacanang certifying the universal health care. Mr. President, we'd like to ask the Secretary. Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, with that, I move to resume consideration, Senate Bill number 1896. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Mr. President, we'd now like to ask the Secretary to read the certification.
Secretary will read the certification from the Office of the President.
October 10, 2018, Senator Vicente C. Soto III, Senate President, the Philippine Senate, Pasay City. Mr. Senate President, pursuant to the provisions of Article 6, Section 26, 2 of the 1987 Constitution, I hereby certify to the necessity of the immediate enactment of Senate Bill Number 1896 entitled An Act Instituting Universal Health Care for All Filipinos, prescribing reforms in the healthcare system, appropriating funds therefor and for other purposes, to address the urgent need for an affordable, comprehensive, and quality health care program that is accessible to all Filipinos. Best regards, very truly yours, President Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading, Senate Bill number 1896. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the Secretary will read again the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
Senate Bill Number 1896, an act instituting universal health care for all Filipinos, prescribing reforms in the healthcare system, appropriating funds therefor and for other purposes. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 14 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstentions, Senate Bill 1896 is approved on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations. Congratulations are in order to Senator J.V. Ejercito for really putting his heart and soul into this measure, Mr. President. And I believe the good sponsor would like to just say a few words in explanation of his vote, Mr. President.
Senator J.V. Ejercito is recognized.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. President. I just like to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, of course, the Senate President, for pushing this measure, especially the Majority Leader, for really calendaring this particular bill every day. Siya po ang nagpupush sa akin, tinatanong niya, and pushing everybody who was concerned. So thank you very much, Majority Leader. Our Senate President Pro Tempore, who has been very instrumental also in improving this measure. And also, the Minority Leader, all of his interventions, all of his suggestions are very much welcome and were very much important in helping refine and improve this measure, and as well as all the other sponsors who are here, Senator Tiberos, Senator Angara, Senator Villanueva, Senator Binay, and probably most of the senators here present would like to co-sponsor. But again, it's not often that we are able to pass landmark legislations like the Universal Healthcare Program, and I am quite proud, and I'm very, very happy and quite privileged that I had the opportunity to be the sponsor of this landmark legislation. I'd like to thank the Senate President for giving me the opportunity to be the chair of the Committee on Health. So it so happened that it was under my watch that this landmark legislation was passed, and I'd like to take this opportunity as well to thank the DOH family, Secretary Duque, Yusek Mario, si Director Bev, the WHO, the PhilHealth family, as well as all the other health advocates who have given all of their time, their effort to make sure that this landmark legislation will become a reality. So again, Senate President Soto, Majority Leader Mix, my dear colleagues, Minority Leader Frank Dillon, and likewise all our colleagues, thank you very much for the support for this landmark legislation para po ito sa ating mga kabayan. Mabuhay po.
Mabuhay, and congratulations, Senator J.V. Ejercito.
Thank you. May we recognize as well Senator Risa,
Ontiveros is
one of our
recognized.
principal authors.
Salamat po, Mr. President at good majority leader. Mabuhay po, unang-una na sa ating Senate Health Committee Chair, J.V. Ejercito, na hanggang sa huling araw nating ito ng sesyong ito, Mr. President, hindi talaga sumuko na kakayaning ma-certify ito as urgent at ma-deliver na po ng ating Senado itong napakahalagang batas sa ating mga mamamayan sa lalong madaling panahon. Congratulations din po sa lahat ng mga health reform advocates na ang tagal-tagal na pong isinusulong ito kasama ang Department of Health at ang World Health Organization, lalong-lalo na po sa usapin ng pagbawas, pagtugon sa fragmentation ng ating health service delivery network para mapaabot talaga ang mga serbisyong pangkalusugan sa lahat. I'm very proud, Mr. President, to have been part of the group of co-authors for this universal healthcare law sa pamamagitan po ng Healthy Pinoy, Healthy Pinas Bill. At on this day na ating ipagdiriwang rin ang 102nd anniversary ng ating Senado, palagay ko napaka-espesyal talagang tagumpay ito. So maraming salamat at mabuhay po sa lahat.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Minority Floor Leader would like to
The Minority
recognize.
Leader is recognized, Senator Frank Drilon.
Mr. President, I share the joy of the entire chamber in having this landmark legislation passed, and we extend our warm congratulations to the author, Senator J.V. Ejercito, for the effort that he put into the bill so that we can really find universality in healthcare. It is, however, ironic and sad, Mr. President, that as we push this legislation, which will allow access to the universal health care in our country, the Department of Budget and Management has found it necessary to chop off billions of pesos in the national budget. While we are here working for the universal health care bill, and we all cooperated, we crossed party lines to have it, the Department of Budget and Management in the 2019 budget has chopped off and removed about 10, I don't know, 10 or 4, how much? 30 billion. 30 billion in the budget of the Department of Health, which puts in danger about 15,000 health workers, nurses principally. That is why in one of the amendments I inserted into the bill, which was accepted graciously by the good sponsor, is to make all the health personnel permanent so that the DBA will be obligated to provide funds, because we can never succeed in our dream of providing adequate health care unless we have enough health workers to provide the services so necessary. And it is sad to note that until today, we still see a 30 billion cut in the budget of the DOH. Let me go on record, Mr. President, that we will not allow this budget to be passed with the cut on the DOH budget, and we'll fight.
Our dear seatmate, colleague, Senator J.V. Ejercito, as the sponsor and chair of this landmark legislation. It's such a great honor and privilege as well on my part, Mr. President, to be one of his co-sponsors. I remember going to different places in this country, in Legazpi City, in Dagupan City, and in other places to conduct public hearings, Mr. President. And it's just such a great joy in our hearts that we are passing this landmark legislation. And let me associate also myself in the statements made by our minority floor leader that we should not stop, Mr. President, in passing this landmark legislation, but we should continue to work hard to make sure that the budget of DOH, that we'll be able to restore the budget of DOH in order to implement this landmark legislation and to send the right message to our people that indeed we care for their health. Thank you, Mr. President, and again, congratulations to all of us.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, Senate President Pro Temp, Senator Ralph Recto would like to insert to the records his explanation of his vote, Mr. President. Thank
You
Mr.
place that on record.
Mr. President, move to resume consideration of, we move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1850. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is an act institutionalizing the National Integrated Cancer Control Program and appropriating funds, therefore. To sponsor, Mr. President, we'd like to recognize Senator J.V. Ejercito and to amend Senator Franklin M. Dillon.
The sponsor, Senator J.B. Ersto, is recognized, and to propose amendments, the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield the floor for some proposed amendments, which we'll submit for his consideration?
Willingly, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. The first amendment is on page 6, line 25. Insert the word private after the word public, so that the participation of the private sector will be very clear. So, page 6, line 25, after the word public, insert the word private.
We accept, Mr. President.
Just out of curiosity, are there any other amendments, Mr. Majority Leader? Any other senators who wish to propose amendments other than the Minority Leader? So that we can dispose of the items by page. Already submitted. So there are no amendments in page 1, so to page 5. We are on page 6, and the amendment is accepted by, what does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none. Adopted. Page
Thank
7.
you, Mr. President. We have no amendment on page 7, 8, and 9. Our next amendment is on page 10.
Page 10.
Page 10.
We are on page 10.
Yes, sir.
Page 10.
On page 10, line 30, between
13.
30, sir.
30.
Page 10, line 30, in between specialty cancer centers and regional center and regional cancer centers, insert the phrase stand-alone specialty cancer centers.
What does the sponsor say?
We accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
On still
No
on
other-
the same page,
Still same page.
line 32, after the word country, delete the word the and insert the following phrase. In accordance with section 34 of this act, comma, the DOH, comma, in the implementing rules and regulations of this law, comma, shall provide for the minimum. We submit, Mr. President.
You are deleting
We are deleting,
only the.
yes,
Accepted, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
still on the same page, page 10, line 34, after the word centers, insert a comma and insert the following phrase. After the comma, as well as the appropriate licensing and accreditation requirements and procedure, comma, and the procedure for licensing in a timely manner.
Shall be defined.
Shall be
Cetera, cetera.
defined,
Huh?
implemented. Accepted, Mr. President.
I'm sorry.
Page 10.
Okay. Mr. President, just a typographical error. We repeated the phrase "and procedure," so delete the first two words "and procedure." So it would just read this way, as well as the appropriate licensing and accreditation requirements and the procedure for licensing in a timely manner. We submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Chair hears none. Adopted.
Still on the same page, page 10, line 34, and up to page 11, line 1, delete the phrase, quote, shall be defined in the implementing rules and regulations of this law.
To delete.
To delete, yes, sir.
What does the
We
sponsor
submit.
say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 11, now, Mr. President,
We're now on page 11.
yes, line 1, delete the phrase, if necessary, and capitalize the letter in the word "the." The sentence will start with the word "the."
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 11, line 2, after the word infrastructure, insert the phrase "and delivery of services to improve access to." Let me repeat that for clarity, Mr. President. On page 11, line 2, after the word infrastructure, insert the phrase "and delivery of services to improve access to." We submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Still on page 11, line 4, insert a new sentence which reads, quote, private institutions may also be accredited as comprehensive cancer centers, specialty cancer centers, standalone specialty cancer centers, regional cancer centers, and cancer satellites or standalone clinics, comma, provided they comply with the requirements for such accreditation. End of the sentence.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Amendment is adopted.
We are now on page 12,
We
Mr.
go to
President.
page 12.
Page 12, line 17. Page 12, line 17.
Line 17.
Insert a new paragraph which will read as follows. The DOH, comma, in collaboration with academic institutions, comma, shall provide subsidies and scholarships for training of oncology professionals, such as medical oncologist, radiation oncologist, special oncologist, specialized radiation technologist, medical physicists, oncology nurses, and other specialized oncology professionals. We submit, Your Honor.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
On page 14,
No amendments on page 13?
no amendments on page 14 for our part, Mr. President.
13. We go to page 14.
Page 14. On page 14, after line 15, insert the following new paragraphs. Receipts from donations, comma, whether in cash or in kind, comma, shall be accounted for in the books of the donor government agency in accordance with accounting and auditing rules and regulations, period. The receipts from such cash donations and proceeds from sale of donated commodities shall be deposited with the National Treasury and recorded as a special account in the general fund and shall be available to the implementing agency concerned through a special budget pursuant to Section 35, Chapter 5, Book 6 of Executive Order 292. The cash value of the donations shall be deemed automatically appropriated for the purpose specified by the donor. Donations with a term not exceeding 1 year shall be treated as trust receipts. The donor agency concerned shall submit the quarterly reports of all donations received, whether in cash or in kind, and expenditures or disbursements thereon, with electronic signature to the Department of Budget and Management. Through the Unified Reporting System and to the Speaker of the House, the President of the Senate of the Philippines, the House Committee on Appropriations, the Senate Committee on Finance, and the Commissioner of Audit, by posting such reports on the donor agency concerned websites for a period of 3 years. The head of the donor agency concerned shall send written notice to the said offices when the said reports have been posted on the website which shall be considered the date of submission.
When you mention the House, you mean the House of Representatives?
Yes, sir.
And this will still be included in Section 20.
That's correct, sir.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Chair hears none. Adopted.
Just for the record, although it has been adopted, the amendment that we just approved reproduces the provision in Section 5 of the 2018 General Appropriations Act, which details the procedure for the use of donations made to the agency.
All right.
Our next amendment is on page 14, Mr. President.
Page 14.
Line 17. Before the word screening, insert the words primary care. We submit, Mr. President.
What does the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Chair hears none. Adopted.
Still on the same page, page 14, line 26, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. The Cancer Assistance Fund and the PhilHealth benefits shall be made available in public and private DOH licensed cancer centers. DOH and PhilHealth shall prescribe in consultation with stakeholders the coverage rates and applicable rules on options to charge co-pay for services rendered. Processes to avail of such funding shall be streamlined to ensure timely provision of cancer care. We submit, Mr. President.
What did the sponsor say?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? Chair hears none. Adopted. Any other amendment on page 14?
No more amendment. We go to page 15,
Page
Mr. President.
15.
On page 15, line 20, Mr. President, after line 20, insert a new paragraph to read as follows. The FDA shall create a dedicated and streamlined process, not exceeding 1 year, for the licensing of innovator and generic cancer medication, subject to appropriate quality checks and compliance with minimum standards. We submit, Mr. President.
Sponsor?
Accepted, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Our last amendment is on Section 31.
That is no amendment on page 15, page 16.
This is on page
Page
17.
17.
Page
Yes.
17, Your Honor.
Page 17.
We propose to delete Section 31, which punishes as unlawful acts, and it will be recalled that during the period of interpellation, we pointed out that this is a prior restraint. And if they make false representations, then those who are affected adversely can bring them to court. And in fact, just in the recent days, we read about the FDA closing a clinic somewhere in central Luzon who made such false claims. That is the remedy, Your Honor. We should not make it, not make the advertisement a criminal act, because that is a prior restraint which can be questioned. It is for that reason that we are proposing to delete Section 31, which makes it unlawful to advertise that there is a cancer cure. We submit, Mr. President.
Sponsor.
We accept, Mr. President.
Accepted. Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we thank the good sponsor for accepting our amendments. We have no further amendments.
No
Thank you
further
also.
amendments, no amendments on page 18. Sponsor, any other majority leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I just asked our colleagues, no other members wish to propound any amendments. We move to close the period of amendments, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, period of amendment is closed.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading Senate Bill number 1850. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Senate Bill 1850 is approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Congratulations once again are in order for the very hardworking Senator J.V. Ejercito. And we'd like to, I believe our colleagues would like to also make some few manifestations. Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Congratulations, Dr. Ejercito. Yes. Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the kind indulgence of the good author and sponsor, I'd like to manifest my request to be made a co-author of our cancer bill. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, may I also be made, placed on record that I be made co-sponsor and co-author of the measure together with Senator Gordon, Senator Drilon, Senator Recto, all the members that are here present today, Mr. President, including yourself, if you wish so, Mr. President.
Yes, we will place that on record, the Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have several bicameral conference committee reports, Mr. President, with the indulgence of our colleagues. Mr. President, we're in receipt of the bicameral conference committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2023 and House Bill number 7442. I move to consider the said bicameral committee report, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to recognize the chairperson of the Senate panel, Senator Ontiveros, for their sponsorship of the bicameral conference committee report.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized to sponsor the bicameral conference committee report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, I have the distinct honor and privilege to submit to this august chamber the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2023 and House Bill number 7442, providing special protection for children in situations of armed conflict. With the agreed version between the Senate and House panels, we look forward to provide children involved in armed conflict and internally displaced children with special protection from all forms of abuse, violence, neglect, discrimination, and other conditions prejudicial to their development. Mr. President, it's in this light that I would like to move that the entire joint explanatory statement of the Bicameral Conference Committee be put into the records. Allow me to present its salient points. Firstly, it declares children as zones of peace, calling on all those involved in armed conflict to preserve the integrity and dignity of children and to promote mutual respect. Secondly, it introduces the rights of the child in situations of armed conflict, including the right to be considered objects of special respect, the right to be treated as victims, the right to be protected from any form of attacks or acts of violence, to be treated humanely in all circumstances, and to have access to justice. Thirdly, it identifies state measures to prevent the recruitment, use, or displacement of children involved in armed conflict. Among them are the inclusion of children's concerns in peace negotiations, the promotion of a culture of peace and human rights, the introduction of poverty alleviation programs, the activation of child protection mechanisms, and the establishment of an efficient monitoring system. Fourthly, it directs the institutionalization of policies, programs, procedures, and services that would facilitate the rescue, release, rehabilitation, and reintegration of these children with their families and communities. Mr. President, ratifying this bicameral report will be an important component in institutionalizing protection for Filipino children caught in situations of armed conflict. We as adults must always keep in mind that it is our responsibility to spare our children from harmful and many times deadly circumstances we ourselves have created. Marami pong salamat, Mr. President.
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. With that, I move that we approve and ratify the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2023 and House Bill number 7442. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2023 and House Bill 7442 is hereby adopted and ratified.
Senator Gord, there you are. Mr. President, we are in receipt of the bicameral conference committee. Mr. President, no, this is SSS. Children in conflict. I'll let you know. Yes. Sorry. Yes, yours is ratified. Did you explain it? Okay na yun. Mr. President, I move that we receive the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 2158. This is an act rationalizing and expanding the powers and duties of the Social Security system. Mr. President, I move to consider the said bicameral conference committee report.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in the bicameral report is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the chairman of the Senate panel, Senator Richard Gordon, for his sponsorship speech of the
Senator
bicameral
Richard
report.
Gordon is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader. This is a joint explanation of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 2158. The Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 2158, after having met and fully discussed the subject matter in a conference, hereby report to their respective houses the following: that, 1, the conferees agreed to use the Senate version as the working draft of the bicameral meeting and adopted the following as the reconciled version. A, under Section 4, B and 2 of the Senate version, the word for and its numerical equivalent for were changed to 3, Your Honor. And B, under Section 14B of the Senate version, the phrase 12 months of which should be was inserted between the words contributions and in. And C, under Section 22A of the Senate version, the word 3% and its numerical equivalent 3% were changed to 2%. All other provisions in the Senate version, including the title, were adopted in toto, Mr. President. Just a little bit more, sir. In case of a conflict within the statement in this joint explanation and that of the provisions of the reconciled version of the accompanying conference committee report, the provisions of the latter shall prevail. This is signed by Richard J. Gordon, yours truly, Chairman of the Senate panel, Prospero Pichai, Jr., Chairman, House of Representatives panel, with tremendous thanks to Mario Go of Baguio, Your Honor, from the Congress, and Prospero Pichai, and from the Senate, our distinguished senators, the Minority Floor Leader, Senate President Drilon, and of course, Senator Recto, and of course, Senator Win, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the evening, Gatchalian, Your Honor. And also, hindi wala naman doon. Wala naman doon. That is all, Your Honor. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Senator Gordon, Majority Leader.
Yes, congratulations to our sponsor, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to adopt and ratify the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1753 and House Bill number 2158. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? The chair hears none. The Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 1753 and 2158 is hereby adopted and ratified.
Mr. President, may we
The
recognize the
Minority
distinguished
Leader,
minority leader.
yes, the Minority Leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We just wish to spread into the record our congratulations for the for Senator Gordon for the effort that he has placed into this bill. We all helped. Again, this is a bipartisan effort in order to protect our social security system. With the very politically charged benefits, or with the benefits which were granted recently, our social security system was in danger of collapsing in about 10 years or so time. And therefore, there was an urgent need to craft this measure in order to protect the system from any further earth-shaking, politically motivated populist moves which could endanger the social security system, which is there to protect our future workers, our future retirees. Moreover, Mr. President, the bill also strengthened the Social Security Commission. As Secretary of Labor before, we sat in the commission, in the Social Security Commission, and we noted that it is one of those agencies which has become a dumping ground, not only on the part of the political leaders of this government, but also of the employer and the worker sector. So we have the bill clearly puts premium on competence. The labor and worker sector and the employer sector can continue to nominate, but the nominees must pass the qualifications that are imposed in the law. And most importantly, the chair of the commission is ex officio the Secretary of Finance, because the Secretary of Finance, being the primary economic advisor of the President, and the Social Security being a form of taxation, there is every reason to make the Secretary of Finance the ex officio chairman, rather than, again, be the position being a political reward of all presidents in the past. So it is in the sense that we believe that this Senate, under your leadership, Mr. President, did the country a favor by strengthening our social security system through the passage of this law. So it is in that sense that we place of record our commendation for the principal author and sponsor, Senator Richard Gordon. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
I cannot thank our colleagues. Mr. President, thank you very much. I cannot thank Senate President Drilon for his very, very kind remarks, which I really humbly accept, and also Senator Recto. All of us, this is really a bipartisan effort. And what is most important is that we have expanded the base of the Social Security system. Now, even the OFWs have a chance to be there, the seamen especially, and also the land-based workers can now be part of it. Initially, as employer and employee, contributions will be handled by them, but nonetheless, eventually, the DFA and the DOLE will work towards including them, Mr. President. There are many other provisions. I think this is one bill that the Senate, under your leadership, Mr. President, can be very proud of. It is a landmark bill. It's a game changer. And I'm glad that with the help of our colleagues, we can now call it the Social Security Act of 2018, Mr. President. Congratulations to all of us here. Again, with my profound thanks. Thank you very much. God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to second the motion of Senator Gilon. Senator Gordon really worked hard on this, as he does with all of his committees that he's chairing. As a matter of fact, this measure is in the front page of almost all business sections of the newspaper today, hailing the passage of this measure, be invigorating the Senate, the SSS rather, invigorating the SSS once again. Mr. President, just a few housekeeping matters. Senator Joel Villanueva would like to be made co-author of Senate Bill number 2031, an act providing for the rank classification of the PNP, for the record, and as co-sponsor of House Bill number 5576. This is the Secondary School Career Guidance and Counseling Act. Mr. President, for the record.
Place it on record.
And Mr. President, Senator Grace Poe would like to be made as well co-sponsor of Senate Bill number 1971. This is an act providing for the special protection of child passengers in motor vehicles. For the record, Mr. President.
Yes, you place it on record.
And Senator De Lima would like to also be made co-author of Senate Bill number 1971. In the same measure, Mr. President, an act providing for special protection of child passengers.
So placed on record.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the Senate President's designation of Senate conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of Senate Bill number 1896 and House Bill number 5784. This is the Universal Health Care Act, Mr. President.
The following members are hereby designated as conferees on the part of the Senate in the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of 1896 and 5784. Senator J.B. Ejercito as chairperson and members Recto, Gatchalian, Villanueva, Hontiveros.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are in receipt of the Bicameral Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1390 and House Bill number 6617, entitled the Philippine HIV and AIDS Policy Act. I move to consider the said Bicameral Conference Committee report, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the Bicam report is in order.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor and chairman of the said panel, Senator J.V. Ejercito, for his sponsorship of the Bicameral Conference Committee report.
Dr. J.B. Ejercito is recognized.
Doctor of Love.
Mr. President, I have the honor to submit a copy of the Conference Committee report of Senate Bill number 1390 and House Bill number 6617. The Bicameral Conference Committee was guided by the declared policies in the bill that states the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV, and acquired immune deficiency syndrome, or AIDS, are public health concerns that have wide-ranging social, political, and economic repercussions. The versions of the Senate and the House of Representatives are very similar, as both uphold the basic human rights and freedoms guaranteed in the Constitution, especially for those persons directly and indirectly affected by the HIV and AIDS situation. The comprehensive details of the disagreeing provision are reflected in the joint explanatory statement. With the permission of the body, I move that the said joint explanatory statement on the disagreeing provision of Senate Bill number 1390 and House Bill number 6617 be read in toto into the record.
Any objection to that motion? Chair is none. Motion is approved.
Before I end, I would like to thank all our colleagues who support the passage of this measure, most especially our Vice Chairperson of the Committee on Health and Demography, Senator Risa Hontiveros, who have worked very hard for this bill. Lastly, I would like to thank the DOH, the advocates of the civil society organizations, who have contributed and continued pushing for the Philippine HIV and AIDS Policy Act. Mr. President, this bill ensures access to HIV and AIDS-related services by eliminating the climate of stigma and discrimination that surround the country's HIV and AIDS situation, and the people directly and indirectly affected by it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, may we recognize as well our colleague, Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my dear colleagues, just 2 days ago, as we were preparing for the bicameral conference meeting, the World Health Organization Western Pacific Regional Director, Dr. Shin Young-soo, issued an alarming statement that sooner or later, the general population of Filipinos, and not just men who have sex with men or MSMs, might be infected by HIV and AIDS. This was confirmed by the Philippine National AIDS Council earlier, warning government that unless steps are taken, the number of Filipinos living with HIV/AIDS will exceed 250,000 by 2030. 250,000 by 2030, a 140% increase in the last 6 to 8 years. 85% of them 15 to 24-year-old MSMs, 32 testing positive every day, the fastest growing epidemic in Asia and the Pacific. And it took us almost 10 years, Mr. President, my dear colleagues. 10 years to set aside our indifference, our prejudices, 10 years to come up with an evidence-based and human rights-centered response, 10 years to address the stigma and discrimination cited by our Health Committee Chair, Senator JV, stigma and discrimination which have been outrageously denying our PLHIVs and people at risk their right to health, which this representation believes should be basic to every Filipino, to every human being. Along with the submission of this bicameral conference committee report is a promise that no Filipino PLHIV shall be deprived of health care and support anymore, that no person at risk will still be afraid to know his or her status, that no 15-year-old will be denied testing and left uncared for. With this report also comes a simple prayer for our dear country to be dragged out from the dark corners of this epidemic of ignorance, negligence, and untimely deaths, the miserable rut where the rest of the world has left us. May this new law be able to adequately respond to the needs of PLHIVs and key affected populations. May this new law usher us to a new dawn of hope. Salamat po, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we are in receipt as well of the bicameral conference.
I have
My
not
apologies, Mr.
entertained the
Oh, my apologies, Mr.
Motion.
President. We move to approve and ratify the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1390 and 6617, House Bill. I so move.
Any objection? The chair hears none. The bicameral conference committee report is hereby adopted and ratified.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a few more. We are in receipt of the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 5780, entitled An Act of the Don Honorio Ventura Technological State University. I move to consider the said bicameral report, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Consideration is in order.
Mr. President, the request of the chairperson of the Senate Bicam panel is to insert to the records his sponsorship speech and joint explanation of the bicameral conference committee report. I so move, Mr. President.
With the consent of the chamber,
Yes, Mr.
the
President.
motion. Any objection? With the consent of the chamber, the motion is approved.
State University, schools, Bicam reports. Yes,
The
Mr.
motion
President.
is to insert into the records.
Thank you. And we could give a bit of leeway to the chairperson that it being his birthday today, Senator Scudero. Mr.
But
President.
you can move for the ratification
Yes, Mr. President. I move to adopt and ratify the bicameral conference committee report.
on the disagreeing votes,
Disagreeing votes, rather.
not provisions, votes of
Disagreeing
Don
votes.
Honorio Ventura Technological State University. Any objection? Chair hears none. The bicameral conference committee report is ratified and adopted.
Mr. President, we're in receipt as well of the bicameral conference committee report on disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6030. This is the Cebu Technological University. I move to consider the said bicameral report, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Once again, the chairperson of the Senate Bicam panel requests that the insert to the records his sponsorship speech and the joint explanation of the bicameral conference committee report. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, with the consent of the chamber, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to adopt and ratify bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6030.
Any objection? There being none, the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes of House Bill 6030 is ratified and adopted.
Mr. President, we are in receipt of the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6465. This is a University of Northwestern Mindanao measure. I move to consider the said BICAM committee report.
Any objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is in order.
Once again, Mr. President, upon the request of the chairperson of the Senate BICAM panel, Senator Escudero, to request that this sponsorship speech be inserted and joint explanation of the bicameral report be inserted into the records.
Any objection? There being none, with the unanimous consent, the motion is adopted.
Mr. President, I move to adopt and ratify the bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6465. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Bicameral Conference Committee report on House Bill 6465 is approved and ratified.
We'd like to recognize with us from the World Health Organization, Regional Office for the Western Pacific, Dr. Albert Domingo, who helped us in many of these measures of the DOH, Mr. President, or the health
We
measures.
wish to thank the resource person.
May I ask for just a quick suspension, Mr. President, while we are waiting for the sponsor of a few of the measures to arrive into the session hall.
Sponsorship?
Yes,
Are
Mr.
these
President.
sponsorship or bicameral reports?
Or rather,
You're
Mr.
done
President, I
with the
withdraw
bicameral.
my motion and we'll just move to the reference of business.
All right.
We have additional reference of business.
We have additional reference of business. The Secretary will read.
Second additional reference of business, resolutions. Senate Joint Resolution Number 15 entitled Joint Resolution Suspending the Excise Tax on Fuel under Republic Act Number 10963, otherwise known as the Tax Reform for Acceleration and Inclusion, TRAIN, and mandating the rollback of the excise tax on fuel to the rates as of December 31, 2017, introduced by Senators Aquino IV, Drilon, Ontiveros, Pangilinan, Trillanes IV, and De Lima.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
PS Resolution Number 916 entitled A Resolution Directing the Appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the national strategy to ensure energy security and energy self-sufficiency in view of the continuing increases in world oil prices, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committee on Energy.
PS Resolution Number 917 entitled A Resolution Directing the Senate Committee on Economic Affairs to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the impact on inflation of suspending the excise tax on fuel as a counter-inflationary measure, its fiscal impact under the TRAIN law, its overall impact on the economy, and the status of the implementation and effectivity of the social mitigating measures therein, introduced by Senator Win Gatchalian.
Referred to the Committees on Economic Affairs and Ways and Means.
Committee reports. Committee report number 495 submitted jointly by the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance on Senate Joint Resolution number 13, introduced by Senators Escudero and Recto, entitled Joint Resolution Extending the Maintenance, Availability, and Release of the Funds Created pursuant to Republic Act number 10368 as amended by Republic Act number 10766, specifically such funds in the Land Bank of the Philippines until December 2019 to ensure payment of qualified human rights violations victims and authorizing the Commission on Human Rights to administer the effective distribution thereof, recommending its approval without amendment, taking into consideration Senate Joint Resolution number 14 and House Joint Resolution number 26, sponsor Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Committee report number 496, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance on Senate number 2065, introduced by Senator Sonny Angara, Gatchalian, Gordon, and Ligarda, entitled An Act Creating the Positions for Judges at Large, amending for the purpose Batas Pambansa Bilang 129, otherwise known as the Judiciary Organization Act of 1980, and appropriating funds therefore, recommending its approval in substitution of Senate numbers 1681, 1691 and 2002, taking into consideration House Number 7309, sponsor Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the calendar for ordinary business.
Senator Bam is coming down.
We can suspend for a few minutes. Senator Escudero is waiting in the lounge.
Matagalan tayo. Ako matagalan tayo din, boss. Nininervous ako pag nandun tayo. Late. I believe Senator Bam is on his way down, Mr. President. Should be in.
So we suspend for a few minutes while waiting. Huh?
Yeah, he already motion
Yeah.
for suspension. Nag-suspend. Yes,
Suspended na.
Senator Bam wants to sponsor after sponsorship. Amend lang si Ralph and then security tenure. Yes, ma'am. Ready ka na sa amendment mo? Yung Coco Levy, wala kayong bike report? Coco Levy.
Saan si Coco?
Yes, ma'am.
Ikaw ang wala saan. Sabi.
All right. Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that with the permission of the body to transfer from the calendar of ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Senate Bill number 1240 under Committee Report number 494. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 1240. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order. Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill 1240, an act upgrading the position of the Provincial Science and Technology Officer into the Provincial Science Director in the Department of Science and Technology, amending Republic Act Number 6959, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes.
Mr. President, may we recognize the gentleman from Tarlac, Senator Bam Aquino, to sponsor the measure.
Senator Bam Aquino is recognized.
Maraming salamat, Mr. President, Majority Floor Leader. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. It is an honor to address all of you today to sponsor Senate Bill number 1240, Committee Report number 494, or the Provincial Science and Technology Directors Act. Technology is often touted as the great equalizer, and rightly so. Through science and technology, we can improve the quality of education, increase the yield of farmers and fisherfolk, make lives easier, and create livelihood for more Filipino families. We must ensure that the power of technology flows through our communities, energizes nation building, and creates a better life and better future for Filipino families. As such, it's only right that we recognize the Filipinos who are working hard to make this a reality. Kapag kumakayod, lalo na po kapag kumakayod para sa kauunlad ng kapwa Pilipino, dapat lang po na bigyan natin ng karampatang paghanga at sapat na sweldo. That said, we proudly sponsor the passage of the Provincial Science and Technology Directors Act, which will recognize passionate Filipinos, the passionate Filipinos who are dedicated to giving our countrymen in rural areas access to technology-based livelihood opportunities. This measure is actually quite a simple measure. It will promote current PSTOs, or Provincial Science and Technology Officers, to PSTDs, or Provincial Science and Technology Directors, with a salary grade of 26, which is equitable to their counterparts in DTI. Mr. President, let me also mention that this bill has already is also in process in Congress and has approval from DBM. As such, once we are able to upgrade their salary grade status to 26, they shall also be entitled to reimbursable representation and transportation allowance commensurate to their office and other benefits as prescribed by law. While technology is known to be a great equalizer, legislators must also strive to build an equitable government that thrives on meritocracy. Let's give our science and technology professionals what they are due. Naniniwala po ako sa kapangyarihan ng teknolohiya at may tiwala po ako sa kakayahan ng mga Pilipino. Sa tulong po ng teknolohiya, kaya po natin bigyan ng ginhawa ang mga nahihirapan, paundarin ang bayan at siguraduhin na wala pong maiiwan na magtatagumpay ang bawat mamamayan. Tulungan po natin ang mga nagtataguyod at nagsusulong ng teknolohiya sa probinsya at sa buong bansa. Ipasa po natin ang PSTD Act or the Provincial Science and Technology Directors Act. Maraming salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study the measure further, we move to suspend consideration of
Any
this.
objection? Chair hears none. The consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration on Senate Bill number 1998, Mr. President. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
This is, the status is, this is the rice tariffication measure. The status is we're on the period of interpellation, period of amendment, rather. May we recognize the sponsor, Senator Villar, and to propose amendments, Senator Ralph Recto. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Cynthia Villar, the sponsor is recognized, and Senator Ralph Recto.
And may we request, Mr. President, the Secretary to distribute the clean copies of the amendments.
Already
yesterday.
distributed. It was already distributed earlier.
At pinatawag ko na. Thank you, Mr. President.
It was already distributed earlier.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
President.
Recto.
May we move for a 1-minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session is suspended. Ayun na. Hello. Yeah. Yeah, sige.
Binigay mo na. Oo. Kasi, ano,
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, once again, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Cynthia Villar, and to propose amendments, Senator Ralph Recto.
Senator Ralph Recto is recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, there might be a few difficulties because our amendments are based on the actual committee report, and we only received a copy of what was amended this afternoon.
Yeah.
What was amended last night, we only received it in our office at about 4 p.m. today, Mr. President. But we could try to endeavor.
Okay lang, okay lang. Okay lang.
Well, we were able to hurdle that last night. Why can't we do it now?
No, the point is that there are two copies.
Yes.
Our
okay.
amendments is based on the actual committee report.
Yes,
Last night,
it
yes.
happened last night, so we can just look for it.
So we will look for it. So we move forward. Okay,
It's
thank
all
you,
right,
Mr.
don't
President.
worry.
So the sponsor of the measure should bear with me. Looking at both copies, there might not be a need to, no need for amending first page, no?
Page.
Okay. You know, some of the amendments are style and some of it are substantive, Mr. President. Maybe I should move on to the substantive issues first, with the permission of the body.
Yes.
Okay, on page 1, we have a style amendment, but I will not pursue it at this time, so that we just move on the substantive issues, Mr. President. On page 2, section 3, part of the definition of terms, buffer stock, Mr. President.
Buffer stock. Yes,
Paragraph E.
line 27, paragraph E. Okay.
That is
Of the new
correct,
copy,
Mr.
yes.
President. First, Mr. President, this has something to do with the role of the NFA as far as buffer stocking is concerned. And if I read the paragraph on the role of the NFA to provide buffer stock, in providing buffer stock, the role now of the NFA is not only, based on this provision, Mr. President, is not only to address emergency situations and calamities, but also price stabilization during traditional lean months. Is that the intention of the sponsor? That the NFA will continue in determining prices in the local market?
They will be limited to buying buffer stock in the local market. So they will determine what kind of buffer stock to
Yes.
stabilize prices, but their source of stock will be the local
Yes.
market.
No, but the point is to stabilize prices. Is that still the role of the NFA contemplated here? Or my understanding is that the
So
NFA's
for
role
style,
will be to
that's
provide buffer stock only for emergency situations, disaster relief operations, and natural or
Calamities.
man-made calamities.
Yeah. We can agree to delete yung for price stabilization during traditional lean months.
Thank you, Mr. President. In that case, and there is another section, remember that this is just a definition of term. And there is another section later on which talks about the role of the NFA. Now, for this purpose, to marry both sections, and since there's an agreement on the role of the NFA as far as buffer stock is concerned, may I propose an amendment which will read the entire paragraph, which will read,
Paragraph E.
page 2, paragraph E.
Oh.
Buffer stock refers to the optimal level of rice inventory that shall be maintained at any given time to be used for emergency situations and to sustain the disaster relief programs of the government during natural or man-made calamities, period.
What does the sponsor say?
Tama? Ay, semicolon, I'm sorry.
Semicolon.
Yes.
Yes, tama. Semicolon.
Mawawala yung computed national consumption requirement. Yun. Do you want to remove the computed national consumption requirement by
Yes,
an
I think-
interagency committee?
Yes, and the reason for that is simple, Mr. President. The reason why we're taking that out is the national consumption requirement is based on the price stabilization feature of the NFA.
So what we're saying is they determine what is the optimal level of rice inventory with regard to emergency situations.
I think, I think the reason for this is they want not only NFA but a committee may be created in our economic team that will decide what is the consumption requirement.
Yes.
Because if we leave it to NFA and they make a mistake, then everybody's affected.
Yeah. Mr. President, and precisely, we are only defining what a buffer stock here. At the appropriate time, there is another section that we will lead to that,
Okay.
This is just a
Okay.
definition of terms.
of the buffer stock.
Yes.
So we will just rewrite this section.
Yes, my amendment is that buffer stock should read as follows. Paragraph E, buffer stock refers to the optimal level of rice inventory that shall be maintained at any given time to be used for emergency situations and to sustain the disaster relief programs of the government during natural or man-made calamities.
Okay, we accept the
Streamline.
amendment.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
President.
it is a
Thank you.
streamlined definition of buffer stock.
Yes, thank you.
The sponsor has accepted. Any objection? Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted.
Okay.
No other amendments on page 2?
No other amendments on page 2, but on page 3,
Page 3.
paragraph G, just a style issue, Mr. President. With the permission,
Yes.
paragraph G, out quota tariff rate. This is the amendment. I'll just read the entire paragraph to make it simpler, Mr. President. A konting amendment lang naman to. Refers to the higher rate of customs duty that is levied on the quantities of an imported agricultural product in excess of its minimum access volume. Open close MAV, period.
We are removing of that particular product.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, we accept the amendment.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
Okay, and then on paragraph I, should
Aye.
instead, I'm sorry, paragraph L. Okay, it should read as follows, Mr. President. Rice shortage is a situation where the quantity available or the supply of the commodity in a market falls short of the quantity demanded or required at a given time.
What does the sponsor say?
What is the amendment?
Instead of supplied, supply.
Supply
Yes. The supply instead of
or
supplied.
supply?
Or the supply of the
supply.
commodity. Yes. It's
It's
style.
a style.
It's just a matter
We
of style.
accept the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The amendment is adopted.
Okay. On page 4, paragraph N,
Yes.
again, this is a matter of style, Mr. President. Paragraph N should read as follows. Tariff equivalent refers to the rate of tariff that provides comparable protection under existing quantitative import restrictions, reflected by the average price gap between domestic prices and world prices.
What
And
does
then
the
semicolon
sponsor
N.
say?
Yes.
What does the sponsor say?
Okay.
It's a matter of style.
We accept the amendment.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
On page 4, section 3, again as a matter of style, Mr. President.
Section.
I'm sorry, paragraph O, what do you call this?
Okay.
Yung ganun? Ayan. Yeah. On paragraph O, just a quotation mark after tariffs. Diba?
Retrition with tariffs.
I withdraw the amendment, Mr. President. Wala na yun.
Okay.
Yeah. I withdraw the amendment, I'm
All
sorry.
right, all right.
Okay, on section, on page 4, section, this is just a matter of style again, Mr. President. Section 4, Section 4 of Republic Act Number 8178 as amended is hereby further amended to read as follows.
Section 4 is Section 6A.
No. Section 3 on page 4, no?
Section 4.
Yeah, it's just a matter of style here. Section 3 reads, Section 4 of Republic Act Number 8178 as amended is hereby further amended to read as follows.
Because it was amended before.
Yes.
All right, any
We
objection?
accept that.
Okay.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
Okay. Our Section 4, based on the original committee report, we wanted, there was a section, I don't know if that is the same thing today, but in the committee report, there was a section for repeal of Section 5, okay? Which read accordingly, Mr. President. Section 4, repeal of Section 5. Section 5 of Republic Act Number 8178 is hereby repealed. Hence, the NFA shall no longer establish rules and regulations governing the importation of rice and issue import licenses or permits for the private sector. Likewise, the power of the NFA to first certify the existence of a shortage before importation allowed is hereby removed. I think what should be done here, style din to, di ba? Okay? It should be put in the repealing clause because there is a repealing section at the end of the bill just to delete this and put it in the repealing clause, Mr. President.
Are you talking of Section 5 or Section 4?
Yes. Our repealing clause,
Hindi ba ito yung ano?
yes.
Ito yung amendment ni Senator Drilon na gusto niya isulat natin lahat yung nire-repeal natin sa power of the NFA.
Diyan na yan. Okay.
This one. Because he wanted it to be stated in this bill, all
Yes,
the
we have no
powers.
problem with that as a substance, Mr. President. We're just saying that it would, I have no objection to it. We're just saying that there is a repealing section in Section 19 of the bill, which we could put all the repealing clauses in that section. But I have no violent objection if the body wants to include that in this particular page, Mr. President.
Mr. President.
It is just a matter of style.
The minority leader is recognized.
Mr. President, the Section 4 and the proposed repeal of Section 5 of Republic Act 8178 is the crux, is one of the major policy shifts.
I agree.
And this is the removal of the power of the
Correct.
NFA.
And I am with you on this.
That is why
Yes.
we suggest, Mr. President, that we clearly state it in the law rather than include it in
Yes,
the
repealing section.
clause.
Contained in
Because-
the-
No objection, Mr. President.
All right, then we
I
can move.
withdraw the motion.
So that,
Move on.
Mr. President, on that point, just to facilitate the discussion with the permission of Senator Recto and may we propose to amend Section 3, Section 3 mo, Section 4? Hindi to? Hindi? Ano? Are you sure?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Section 3, remove the whole
Okay. Section 3
of the bill.
of the bill proposes to repeal or to further amend Section 4 of Republic Act 8178. We propose that Section 3 should read as follows. Removal, Section 3, removal of regulatory functions of the National Food Authority, period.
That would be the title of Section 3.
That's correct, sir?
And then the repealing sentences.
And then we say, in order to carry out the policy of the state of complete liberalization of importation, exportation, and trading of rice, Section 6A,
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
1,
Oh.
5, 6, 7, 9, I'm sorry, 11, 12, 13,
15,
No, 14.
14, 15,
16.
16,
17,
17, 18, 19, 22, 23.
20. You left out 20.
No, we retained the 20, Your Honor.
No, may
It's here.
20, 22,
It's here.
23, 24, and 25.
Yes.
20 is here in the original.
We will not repeal section 20.
So you are
I'm sorry,
removing
Amendment 20.
section 20.
Yes. It should be 16. I'm sorry.
Hindi, nandito nga 20. Ayaw na ibalik. Yung section 20.
Can we repeat it?
All right, let's clarify.
Let's clarify. So,
Clarify. Senator, the President Pro Tem, Senator Recto, you are withdrawing your proposal in the amendments after you amended section 3.
Okay.
All the rest, withdraw muna. Di ba?
Yes.
All right, okay.
The position is the same.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of style.
It's just a matter of style.
Yes.
Therefore, the position is the same. Now, the minority leader is introducing an amendment
yes.
to this
yes.
particular section. So let us listen to that now.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Can we repeat it, Mr. President, for clarity? Section 3, period. Removal of regulatory functions of the National Food Authority, period. In order to carry out the policy of the state of complete liberalization of importation, exportation, and trading of rice, Section 6A, 1, 5, 6.
We include one. Can we do it individually? Kasi
One,
you are
5,
removing some of them.
7.
So, can we do it one by one? We,
Okay, we
yung
will
one, okay po yon, one.
Okay, then we will repeat. Okay, so we'll just, okay, 1,
Okay?
5,
You don't want remove 4? 4 is indicated
well,
here.
this is our amendment. You can suggest an amendment later on, Mr.
Okay.
President. So just,
So
we
yung
can have an
4.
orderly procedure, Mr. President.
Okay. So 1, 5, what
1,
else?
5, 6,
Okay.
7,
Walang 7 dito. Wala. Okay.
11,
Walang 9. Merong wala eh. Tapos,
12,
okay.
Good, good.
13,
Yes.
14,
Yes.
15,
Yes.
16,
Yes.
17,
Yes.
18,
Yes.
19,
Yes.
22,
Okay.
23,
Okay.
and 25 of PD4, as amended, are hereby repealed. Period.
I just want to make a comment that in our version, we remove more. So
Alright.
can we include those that we have removed that you did not mention?
You may do so. You may do so now. Would you, if you would like to amend his proposed amendment, we can do that.
Yeah.
And you
Okay, so
will
we
you state
include
the Roman numerals that you would want included?
Okay, can I mention those which were not removed that you
Yes.
want included?
Yes.
Number 4?
4.
4, di ba?
Mm.
Kasama dito. And then 9,
9.
10, and then 20,
20.
and 24.
24. All right. Is that
Can we ask
acceptable?
for this is a very sensitive provision. Can we ask for a 1-minute suspension
Okay.
to completely review it before we comment?
All right.
Diba?
Session is suspended.
Bas, 1, ang tinanggal niya is 1, 5, 6, 7. In-include niya 7. Oh, wala. Eh, pero hindi ka na nga nakalagay dito. Eh, wala rito eh. Binabasa ko eh. Nasaan na 7? 9 na yung 6. Tapos 9.
The session is resumed.
Mr. President, the reason why we did not include the paragraphs enumerated by the good sponsor is that these paragraphs pertain to the corporate powers of the NFA and has nothing to do with with its regulatory function. We can explain it one by one.
Eh, yung atin na tinatanggal na.
The removal of paragraph 5 as proposed. I'm sorry, huh? 4 ba yun? Sorry, 4.
With his, ano?
Paragraph 4 provides, the NFA shall have the power to enter into, make, perform, carry out contracts of every class and description necessary or incidental to the realization of its functions with other persons, firm, corporation, or public, including loans or borrowings by the authority from domestic and foreign sources, negotiate contracts on behalf of the Philippine government and any foreign government or institution. This has nothing to do with regulation, Mr. President. That's why this is a corporate power of the NFA, which it should retain.
Mr. President, they don't want to give power to the NFA that will allow them to borrow.
Well, we can remove the borrowing portion.
Yun lang. So we will remove that portion of section 4.
We can phrase it so that we delete including loans and borrowings from domestic, etc., etc.
So, from section 4.
Yes, from
Okay.
section 4.
So we accept that.
Okay, we crafted the okay. The reason why we did not include paragraph 9 is that this is a coordinative, this grants the NFA the coordinative authority to coordinate with other agencies. It reads, to coordinate the activities of all government agencies engaged in the study, research, promotions, promotion of measures desired to enhance the integrated growth and development of the grains industry. So that is why we wanted to retain this.
Okay. We accept that amendment.
No, we have no amendment.
We don't remove number 9.
No, we didn't remove number 9. It is your representation.
Yeah, we agree with you that we will not remove number 9.
All right. So far, huh?
Okay.
Section 4,
Partial.
partial, and you've already stated what is going to be removed.
Yes.
And then 9
Oh, we don't remove section 9.
will be deleted from this proposal.
Yes.
Okay.
And then number 10.
Okay, Roman numeral 10, or 10. It says, to call upon and deputize any official of government agencies as may be necessary to assist the authority in carrying out its functions. Why are we deleting? I think, Mr. President, the NFA should be given that authority to deputize government agencies, especially when, in times of emergency, when they would have to release buffer stock in the market.
We agree with you, Mr. Minority Floor Leader.
Okay, so that we will retain that power. Okay.
And then 20.
20, okay. 20. Power 20 is to sell, lease, mortgage, pledge, or otherwise dispose of the property, assets, or undertaking of the authority or any part thereof as the authority may deem fit. sale of warehouses which are no longer necessary because the power is for the power is only to maintain buffer stock. They may have to sell certain assets.
We accept that, Mr. Minority Floor Leader.
Okay. And the last is
24.
24. It's 24, power under section 24 is to invest its fund or other assets in such undertaking as it may deem wise and necessary, such as but not limited to investment in all kinds of security stocks, etc., etc. This is a power to invest their funds.
We accept that, Mr.
So,
Minority.
all right.
Therefore, as we place it now, the proposed amendment of the minority leader is accepted in its entirety by the sponsor, except for that particular line in number 4.
Section 4.
Yes.
Number 4.
Roman
Yes.
numeral
We
4.
will craft it accordingly so that that agreement is carried out.
All right. Subject to style.
Yes, Mr.
The amendment is accepted.
Okay.
Adopted.
Yeah.
Therefore, you have incorporated section 3, 4, and 5 all together now into one section.
Yes.
That is that is what happened.
Yes, 4 and 5.
That is the consequence.
Yes. That's correct,
All
sir.
right. All right.
Section
Thank
3,
you.
4, and 5.
Yeah, this is
Okay.
all lumped into one now. Into
Okay.
one section.
Thank you, Mr.
All right.
President.
Okay. Senator Rector, you may continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the next section is actually talking about the issuance of sanitary and phytosanitary import clearance for sale, no? You still need the section 6 here.
For rice.
Diba? Kailangan pa ba ito for sale? So, Mr. President, because we added additional sections earlier, the numbers may be different.
You just
No,
read the
we-
title. Just go to the title.
Yes,
if you want.
yeah, but prior to this kasi, Mr. President, if you take a look at the committee report, section 6, a new section 5 is hereby inserted to read as follows. Okay? That should be a new section 5 is hereby inserted after section 4 of Republic Act number 8178 as amended to read as follows.
So, what
That's
will
how
we-
it should look like, Mr. President.
Pero wala na ngayon eh.
But since we amended, so I don't know what that number should
No,
be.
since you have amended it, it is now a new section 4 is hereby inserted to read as follows because this section 3 is now lumped. 3, 4,
Correct,
and
no?
5 are
Yes,
all lumped
that is
together.
correct. That is correct.
All right. So now you are saying a new section 4
Of
is
Republic
hereby
Act.
inserted
Yes.
to read as follows.
Yes, that is correct. After, so it should read, a new section 4 is hereby inserted after section 3 of Republic Act number 8178 as amended to read as follows. Accepted?
Correct.
That is the first amendment, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? What does the sponsor say?
We accept.
Thank
All
you.
right. Accepted, adopted.
Okay, now,
Now, here comes the...
issuance of sanitary.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is really part of a substantive issue, Mr. President. But
Okay.
before I propose the amendment,
This will now be section 4.
yes, that
Okay.
is correct. Before I propose the amendment, let me clarify with the distinguished gentle lady from Las Piñas. What is the role of the Bureau of Plant and Industries insofar as issuing clearances of this nature, which is really a qualitative
Yes.
clearance, Mr. President? So ito parang lisensya to import, di ho ba?
It's a requirement for securing import clearance.
Yeah.
Yes.
The role of the Bureau of Plant Industry is to issue sanitary and phytosanitary import clearance for everything.
Yes. Okay.
Because we want to protect our crops, our
Correct.
agriculture from
Correct.
any diseases that can come
Yes.
to our country.
And today, insofar as rice, they have to issue how many clearances? Isa lang ba yan? Dalawa ba yan?
Isa lang. Hindi ba isa?
This is the same clearance they
They
have
only
in
issue
Australia.
one,
Okay.
but they have to use it before it expires. The import should come before the sanitary and phytosanitary clearance expires.
Okay. So, hindi ba, so, prior to importation, let's say someone imported the rice, he needs that clearance even before he imports the rice.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
And then,
Pagdating ng, if I may be allowed to finish,
Oh.
pagdating ng rice ngayon sa port natin, hindi ba may isa pang clearance na ini-issue bago ilabas?
meron pa ba?
In effect, parang dalawang, one is to import eh. Okay? And then there's another one, isn't it? When it comes to the port already, bago ilabas sa port to enter the domestic market, di ba chine-check pa nila ulit yun kung may bukbok, halimbawa, kung so on and so forth. In effect, dalawa. Is it not correct?
I'm not familiar.
Yes, yes. Oh.
I only know that you have to import
Correct.
a sanitary and phytosanitary so that you will protect the country from
Correct.
importing from countries which has diseases
Correct.
that may affect our crops. I'm not familiar that you have to do another when you come. I think the only provision here is that it has to be done before the sanitary and phytosanitary expires.
Yes.
Because
isn't it-
sometimes it might take them too long that there is something wrong with that country already. So I think that's the reason for that.
So in effect, the documents here are what? So halimbawa, you go to the, before you even import,
Yes, you get one.
you go to the Bureau of Plant Industry. Okay? And you ask a permission to import. Right? And what do you tell them?
May you repeat your question?
Yes. How do you get a permit from the BPI?
You apply.
Okay. And what do you submit in documents to apply?
Where you're going to import, what you're going to import, something like that. So they will know. They will check if that country from where you are
So
importing is
country
safe.
of origin.
Yes.
Na safe doon. Halimbawa, in
Yeah.
this case, rice.
Yes.
Let's say sabihin Vietnam.
Yes.
Okay? Okay, and then you're given this permit.
Yes. But there's
Or
an
a clearance.
expiration date.
Correct. Okay.
So you
Now-
have to have it come before that
Correct.
expiration.
Okay, so let's say you went now to Vietnam. You got the goods. You still get a certification somewhere there, right?
We're not familiar with that.
Okay, and then you bring in the product here now.
Can we research on that
Yes.
and get
Okay.
back to you?
Yeah. And the reason for this is simple, Mr. President. The reason why I ask these questions before I propose an amendment is because tinanggal na natin yung authority ng NFA magbigay ng lisensya. Okay? Ngayon naman, I understand the reason why you need a BPI
No,
to
but
issue the-
even if the NFA has
If I
authority,
may finish for my trend of thought. Tinanggal natin yung NFA, tama yun, and I agree with that. Okay? Now, wala na rin yung quantitative import restriction. Now, this is a qualitative import restriction, and I agree that there must be certain laws, rules, and regulations to follow. But we know that the Bureau of Plant and Industry in the past were responsible for creating also onion cartel, garlic cartel, because of the issues of these sanitary and phytosanitary import clearances.
you make provision.
Okay? How I think it should work is, hayaan mo mag-import lahat ng may gusto, pagpasok sa port, pag nandyan na sa port, bisitahin nila, tignan nila, o saan ba nanggaling to? Galing ba sa tamang bansa? Hindi ba burok itong pinasok ninyo? Fit for human consumption ba to? O okay lahat? You have your certifications? Na-inspect o ilabas? Within 7 days. Something like that.
So
Okay.
that they will not limit the importation to some people.
Yes. Because in the past, we all know na meron gimmick sa rice sa NFA. Ito naman dito, onion, garlic, kung saan-saan. Di ba? So I can, yeah, since we're not too familiar yet with the workings of the BPI, maybe we can just move on to this at the appropriate
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
Yes. So we can move forward.
For further study,
For further
Mr.
study.
President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Because what we don't want to happen, and I'm sure that the gentle lady and I and the minority
course.
leader and all the members here do not want to create another agency with monopolistic powers, Mr. President. Yes. Moving forward, Mr. President, again on the same page, for style, section 4, di ba? Or 5 na ba to?
Section 4, but the succeeding is section.
Yes. Section 4, so it should read as follows. Section 6 of Section 5, di ba?
Yeah.
Of Republic Act Number 8178 as amended is hereby further amended to read as follows. So that's how that section should read. Style pa lang yan, Mr. President.
Yeah, 5.
Okay? So is that acceptable? Is the, Mr. President, there seems to be no objection.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then on, again, these are basically still some, might be form and some substantive issue. We now have here, we're now on Section 6, tariffication. Okay? So, paragraph A. Paragraph A. We propose that paragraph A should read as follows, to have clearer language, Mr. President. For the minimum access volume committed by the Philippines to WTO, the in-quota bound rate indicated in the applicable provisions of the WTO agreement on agriculture shall apply. The paragraph A should read as follows, to be consistent. Okay? For the minimum access volume committed by the Philippines to WTO, the in-quota bound rate indicated in the applicable provisions of the WTO agreement on agriculture shall apply.
Papalitan yung indicated ng in-quota. Okay.
Yes.
So, no, it's a replace.
Because we're talking about in-quota bound rates here, Mr. President.
Okay.
Isn't
We
it?
accept the
Accepted.
amendment.
Thank
Any
you.
objection? Chair hears none.
Thank you.
Adopted.
For paragraph B, we propose the language to read as follows. For rice imports originating from Association of Southeast Asian Nation member states, the import duty rate of the Philippines for rice importation originating from these countries pursuant under the ASEAN Trade in Goods Agreement shall apply.
Okay.
Thank you.
These countries.
Yes.
We accept the amendment.
Thank you. For paragraph C.
Accepted, adopted.
Okay. For paragraph C, for rice imports originating from non-ASEAN WTO member states, the out-quota bound rate calculated in accordance with paragraph 10 of Annex 5, Section B of the WTO agreement on agriculture upon the expiration of the waiver relating to the special treatment of rice of the Philippines shall apply.
What does the sponsor say?
Okay, we accept the amendment.
Accepted. Any objection? Adopted.
Thank you. Then there is a paragraph after, which talks about the NEDA board. Huh? The
Thank you.
calculated tariff equivalent shall be determined by the NEDA board, it says here. Okay? Our recommendation is that, from my understanding being in NEDA in the past, this is particularly for paragraph C. The calculated tariff equivalent shall be determined by the Tariff Commission within 45 days upon the effectivity of this act.
Tariff Commission, not the NEDA
Yes.
board.
The Tariff Commission is under NEDA. Ito yung trabaho nila. Not the NEDA board.
Mr. President, it's
Yeah.
Committee on Tariff and Related Matters of NEDA. Okay?
But there is a Tariff Commission in the NEDA board. Dito ginagawa yung hearing.
Oh, ano? We cannot accept.
Committee on Tariff. That is the present terminology of that bureau.
No, today, in the bill, Mr. President, it talks about the NEDA board.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
NEDA
we will
board.
change that.
Correct.
Committee on
Oh.
Tariff. Committee on Tariff and Related Matters of NEDA.
My understanding,
NEDA board.
You can shorten it and it will be very specific. The calculated tariff equivalent shall be determined by the Committee on Tariff.
Okay, of NEDA board.
Automatically, because this is, yes.
minute suspension.
Session is suspended. Mix. Dali. Tingnan na.
Tariff Commission.
Oh. Okay.
Sessions resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. After the short discussion between myself and the good sponsor accepted our recommendation, which is the actual practice anyway, that this paragraph should read as follows. The calculated tariff equivalent shall be determined by the Tariff Commission within 45 days upon the effectivity of this act.
Would the sponsor confirm?
Yes, I accept
Is
the
there any
amendment.
objection? Chair is none. Motion's carried.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the distinguished sponsor. We are getting to the important sections already, Mr. President. This now becomes Section 5, right? Or 6? Section 6, a new section, tama ba yan? Okay. Section 6, a new Section 6 is hereby inserted after Section 5 of Republic Act Number 8178 as amended to read as follows. The first paragraph should read as follows. Powers of the President. Consistent with the Philippine national interests and the objective of safeguarding Filipino farmers and consumers, the President is hereby empowered to act with full delegated authority in the following circumstances. Paragraph A. The President, upon the recommendation of the NFA Council, may increase, reduce, revise, or adjust existing rates of import duty up to the bound rate committed by the Philippines under the WTO agreement on agriculture and under the ATIGA, including any necessary change in classification applicable to the importation of rice, provided that the power herein delegated to the President shall only be exercised when the Congress is not in session, provided further that any order issued by the President adjusting the applied tariff rates shall take effect 15 days after publication. That's for paragraph A. So this is a permanency issue, Mr.
This is
President.
section 6,
Yes,
powers of the President.
yes, that is correct.
Did you hear it? May NFA Council ka pa ba? Wala na.
Here,
Can you repeat it again?
yes, yes.
Section 6.
Okay, so section 7, powers of the President. Okay, there are 3 powers here.
You are rewriting the whole thing.
Yeah, we're writing it. Yes.
Okay, can you repeat it?
Letter wala. Yes. Okay. So maybe I should read the entire thing, Mr. President. Powers of the President, consistent with the Philippine national interests and the objective of safeguarding Filipino farmers and consumers, the President is hereby empowered to act with full delegated authority in the following circumstances. A. The President, upon the recommendation of the NFA Council.
There is no more NFA Council.
Okay, then the President may increase, reduce, revise, or adjust existing rates of import duty up to the bound rate committed by the Philippines under the WTO agreement on agriculture and under the ATIGA, including any necessary change in classification applicable to the importation of rice, provided that the power herein delegated to the President shall only be exercised when the Congress is not in session, provided further that any order issued by the President adjusting the applied tariff rates shall take effect 15 days after publication. So that's A. If I may continue, B. In the event of any imminent or forecasted shortage or such other situation requiring government intervention, the President is empowered for a limited period and or a specified volume to allow the importation at a low applied tariff rate to address the situation. Such order shall take effect immediately and may be issued even when Congress is in session. And C, in case the calculated out-quota bound rate referred to under Section 4C of this Act exceeds 100%, the provisions of Section 1608, paragraph 8.1 of the CMTA shall not apply. Period.
Can we study that? Can you give us a copy of that?
Yes,
Because we are rewriting entirely.
Yes, we provided a copy to your staff, Mr.
Where?
Madam.
Meron daw kayong copy.
We gave them last night. Yes.
Nasaan? May copy kayo. Then we have, nasaan ang copy? Do you have another copy?
You have another copy? Yeah.
Pwede skip naman.
So,
May kopya pa kayo?
we would like to postpone that amendment
Perhaps we
because
skip
we
that
want to study it
particular
more.
portion.
Section.
Maybe what we can do is while we discuss other matters so as not to delay it, we can project it in the screen
Okay.
so that your staff can read it on the screen.
Sige, ayan na. Aralan niyo. Okay. So we move on to other things.
Yes.
This is hold.
Yes.
On hold.
Yes. we're
So we put
also...
that on hold. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Senator Ralph Recto.
And then we are proposing to add another section, section 6, section 7, a new section 6A is hereby inserted after the new section of 6 of Republic Act number 8178 as amended to read as follows. Section 6A, Trade Negotiation Authority. In the interest of the Philippine rice industry and Philippine consumers, and upon the recommendation of the NEDA and the DA, the President may enter into trade negotiations or renegotiations of the country's international trade commitments on rice. It just authorizes the President to negotiate, if he wishes to renegotiate, Mr. President.
Hindi, trade negotiation lang naman.
Does the sponsor say?
And we review that. Can we study that together with the,
Yes,
with
please.
the other?
We'll skip that portion.
Okay, sure. Okay.
Hold.
And then,
Hold yan.
okay,
Kunin nyo.
Section 7, a new Section 7 is hereby inserted under the new Section 6A, if that will be adopted, of Republic Act number 8178 as amended.
There is no change because that is Section 6A.
Correct.
So we're not changing the section.
Yeah, assuming it were to be adopted. That's what I'm saying, Mr. President. This now refers to the Section 7A.
Section
In
7.
Section 8 of the bill, of the committee report, direct importation by the National Food Authority, di ba? It says here, no? I'm sorry?
There's no,
This is a different.
To maintenance
We
of
are
rice
in
buffer stock.
Section 7 is, Section 8 na naging Section 7 is Special Rice Safeguard.
Okay. No, wala pa tayo sa rice safeguard. We are on, in the committee report, yung direct importation by the National Food Authority.
Where?
Di ba?
We have a different copy here.
We have a different copy here. We removed it in our amendment yesterday.
So it's already been,
Removed.
removed.
Okay. We remove the lifting of the rice export restriction
Yeah, okay.
and the direct
Okay.
importation by National Food Authority. That has been removed.
Okay. I think here what we did here is Section 7, instead of wanted to delete that also, and you deleted it. And this section in the past was part of your required buffer stock. So what we put here is maintenance, this is the title of your Section 7 now. Maintenance of rice buffer stock. Okay?
Meron ba? There's no such thing.
No, because precisely, you had the definition earlier. Then you had Section 8 originally.
So that is your amendment.
You had Section 8 originally.
Yeah,
but when you
it's
deleted
Special
it,
Rice Safeguard.
yes, in the original committee report,
Yes. Oo.
meron ka dating direct importation by the NFA,
Yes.
and in relation also to the buffer stock.
Yes.
Okay? Nawala ngayon yun in the new
Wala na,
amendment.
wala na.
Okay? That's why we're saying maintenance of rice buffer stock. Yeah, that's the title now. To operationalize the definition earlier of your buffer stock, right?
That's a new section, Your Honor.
Yes.
So you are adding a new section.
Yes.
And the title is Maintenance of the Buffer Stock.
Yes. Maintenance of rice buffer stock.
7.
Yes. Okay?
Okay.
So it should read as follows. Section 7, maintenance of rice buffer stock. The NFA shall, in accordance with the rules and procedures to be determined by the NFA Council, maintain sufficient
Wala
rice
nang
buffer.
council,
Okay, then the NFA shall, in accordance with the rules and procedures, maintain sufficient rice buffer stock, which has already been defined earlier, Mr. President.
Okay. We accept that.
Thank you.
There an objection? Chair is none. Motion's carried.
Okay? And in our amendment, we wanted to lift the rice export restriction. Was that lifted already in the committee
Yes,
report?
yes.
So
We
lifted na.
removed that.
Deleted, okay.
Deleted
So we
yesterday.
wanted that deleted also. Okay? Now question, when we delete that, will there still be fees and charges?
Again, please.
Today, it would appear that based on the existing law, there are prohibitions, there are even fees and charges when you're allowed to export, and there are even taxes. This is a very old concept, Mr. President. In fact, we should encourage the export of agricultural products, including rice, in the country. And therefore, there must be no fees and charges, there must be no export tax if we were to export rice, just like any other industry.
What they're saying, Mr. President, they're saying that we just follow what is being followed in other goods. Parang wala nang...
That's fine with me.
Oh.
But in the past, may export restriction at kung kukuha ka ng permit at kung
No more.
payagan
We
ka man.
deleted that. We
Correct.
deleted that.
Pero kung but still, that may have been deleted, but there were fees and charges, there are export taxes, which is a thinking of the 70s today that no longer exists. So I just wanted to put on record that if we liberalize the rice industry and we allow exportation, dapat hindi natin pahirapan yung pag-export ng rice by imposing fees and charges and export taxes. So do we agree on that, Mr. President? That is the intention.
That is the concept.
According to the section 13 of what we deleted during the amendment of the Senate Minority Floor Leader,
Yes.
to establish rules and regulations governing the export of rice, corn, and other grades and their substitute and their products, and to collect fees and charges for such exportation at rates to be determined by the Council. We deleted that already. So
Okay.
there's no more.
So no more fees and charges and taxes on
Yes.
export. Okay, with that clarification,
Yes.
I commend the minority leader and the sponsor of the measure.
Mr. President,
Yes, Senator Antiveros, recognized.
with the indulgence of the gentleman and the lady on the floor, may I just make of record that when it comes my turn to also propose amendments, I will be returning to the issue being raised by the good gentleman from Batangas, but proposing to the good sponsor a different formula, which I will propose as transition to publicly regulated private buffer stocks. Just to put that on record, Mr. President. Salamat po.
Duly noted.
Can you explain that,
minutes.
Miss?
Mr. President, I am submitting that in writing
Okay.
to the good sponsor for her
Okay.
consideration when my time comes.
Okay.
Gusto ko lang pong ipasok po
Yes.
doon sa diskusyon at this point in time.
Okay.
Salamat po, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Antiveros.
Okay, moving forward, Mr. President. Okay, I think we are now more or less on page 9.
Yeah, page
Nine.
7.
7 in
Okay,
the...
sa akin page 9, but your,
The updated
which is
committee-
Section
section
8.
of special rice
Special rice
safeguard.
safeguard.
Section 9. Section 8.
Okay, so we don't have any amendments there, Mr. President. Okay. Just a question. I'm looking now at mechanism for the implementation of the minimum access volume, Mr. President. May I know today, applied, what is the minimum access volume today?
805,200 metric tons.
Okay. Wouldn't it be the case that, will there be an objection if, or wouldn't it apply that the MAB will revert back to 2012 level?
Will the MAV go back to the 2012 level?
Diba? It will, no? With the lifting of the quantitative restrictions based on our international agreement, wouldn't it be that the MAB will revert back to 2012, which is 350,000? Because we're lifting it. 350,000.
Our resource person said that if that is the WTO agreement that will apply, then we go back to that.
But, so that is correct. Our interpretation is correct, isn't it so?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course, we want that.
Yes, and we want that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so why not put it here? So after the paragraph, section 11 or section 10 yan, mechanism for the implementation of the minimum access volume, there is a paragraph. Insert another paragraph. In the case of rice, its MAV will revert to its 2012 level at 350,000.
We don't have that. Anong section po yun? You are adding another section?
This is in the section Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund.
Okay. Where? Here. To implement the policy initiated in this act, there is hereby created the Agricultural Competitiveness.
No, I'm not yet there, Mr. President.
Where?
Because in your original committee report,
Okay.
you had the mechanism for the implementation of the MAV.
So, we
And
will
in that
add that.
paragraph, we added now, yes,
Meron ba?
This will be before
Because
the
this is good
agricultural
for us.
competitiveness.
and good for our negotiating posture as well. And it will apply anyway, based on our agreement, na 350, di ba? Babalik.
So, we will add it to
Yeah,
another section.
Okay, thank you.
What is the, can you
Paano
read
yan?
please the section to be added? After this special.
Okay, subject to style, Mr. President.
Dito.
Because tinanggal ninyo yung minimum mechanization, di ba? Yesterday, tinanggal
Gumagawa nga
Or maybe we should keep that section, and after that paragraph, we include this paragraph, Mr. President. Then now we will get to the meat of the matter, Mr. President.
It's not in the original committee report, Mr. President.
I think it is. I have a copy of the original committee report here.
Ipakita mo sa kanya. Ba't mo sa akin pinakita? Ba't yun? Malapit na eh.
Bakit meron dito?
Malapit na yan. You want
Sige. Maybe one, we are already in the Agricultural Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. Yeah. So do we take it up now? This is the meat of the matter. Present. So do we continue? It's in the law. Yeah.
Tapusin na natin tong section
Okay.
na to.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but we are including that section, yung mechanism, so that we can put this. In the case of rice, its MAV will refer to its, so on and so forth.
What does the sponsor say with that particular
This is
provision?
the first time. Can we study that?
So we will skip that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you agree with me that it will revert back to 2012, isn't it?
We wanted it that way if the WTO will
No, it's part of the
interpret it
agreement.
that
Yes.
way.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. But that should be good for us, isn't that correct? It is.
Yes, that will be good for us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Can we postpone that part of the amendment?
In the meantime, sure, fine.
Yes, okay.
Sure.
Okay, that's clear now. Please proceed.
Okay, so, okay, maybe just to start it off, and then we can go on a suspension. Just one question before we suspend. We are creating a rice competitiveness enhancement fund. What is the intention of the sponsor for this rice competitiveness enhancement fund? Is the intention of the sponsor to have a 60 billion budget, 10 billion yearly for the next 6 years?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not proposing any amendment yet. I'm just clarifying.
Just
Yeah.
part of
Yes,
the clarification.
Yeah.
Yes,
Is it
Senator-
only 10 billion per year or 10 billion plus the tariff collected?
No, it's 10 billion per year. The estimate of the tariff that will be collected is between 8 to 12 billion.
That is why. It makes
But
a
we
lot
don't want to be computing with the DBM what are the tariff.
No,
what-
precisely, that I thought that was what we agreed upon during the interpellation. The rice fund will be 10 billion
Billion a year.
for 6 years.
For 6
coming
years.
from the General Appropriations Fund. And in effect, we just
But hindi
forget
na
about the tariff collection.
collection.
There is something wrong with the clean copy.
No, because if I can finish.
No. There is we agreed that instead of computing what they have collected in tariff, since it's around on the average 10 billion, then we'll just ask them for 10 billion a year, and the tariff will go to them.
No, that's
There's-
correct. That was
Yeah.
how the
Yes.
our interpellation went.
Yeah.
And in other words, 10 billion per year for the next,
Next
6
6
years.
years.
Whatever tariff is collected goes to the general fund.
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
that's
but the way this is written,
no, there was a mistake in the way it's written.
so this is wrong. This
is wrong.
Okay, so okay.
Now let
Thank
let
you,
me
Mr. President.
There is no more mention of what will be collected from tariff. We'll just have 10 billion a year for the next 6 years.
Mr. President, it is mentioned here on page 8, line 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's wrong.
Oh, that's wrong. All right.
That's also my amendment, dear Minority
Yeah.
Floor Leader. Yes, Majority
So,
Floor Leader.
Ask for just say
it
1
will
minute
read,
suspend.
there is hereby created a Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, herein referred to as the Rice Fund. The Rice Fund shall consist of yearly appropriation of 10 billion a year, and there is no more mention of all GTs collected from the importation.
Yes.
The only thing there is 10 billion a year for the next 6 years. After 6 years after the approval of this act.
I'm just
Thank you,
clarifying.
This
Senator.
act through GAA.
Okay, so
Thank you,
Mr.
Senator.
President,
That's recognized.
Mr. President,
Yes.
the position it
And
would
then
appear.
funding of succeeding years, that should be removed.
Okay.
The whole paragraph
Yes.
should be removed.
Yeah, Mr. President, it would appear that the position of the sponsor is that we are only appropriating 10 billion a year for the next 6 years,
Yes.
for a total of 60 billion. Which
And
seems
then
to
there
be-
will be a mandatory review after 6
We will
years.
get to that. I'm
If
not
we
yet
will
there, yes.
continue the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement
Okay.
Fund.
Okay. That is the intention of the sponsor, which I think seems to be the position of the minority leader. But let me point out, and I'm saying that this is the meat of the argument today. Okay? The purpose of this bill is, one, to reduce prices for consumers, to reduce inflation. Okay? By doing so, we will be reducing the price of rice. 100 million will benefit, all of us. Bababa ang presyo. In fact, during the interpolations, in many studies, they're saying at 35%, asahan ninyo, bababa ang presyo ng 25%. Okay? But having said that, on the other hand, what will be the effect on rice farmers? There are many studies. One big effect is that our farmers seem, and the reason why we're doing this is because by and large, we are not competitive para mabawasan nga ang presyo. Okay? On the average, our rice farmers, many of them will close, hihinto sa pagtanim, at dung medyo a little competitive, mababawasan yung kita. Okay? In fact, studies show also that a little less than 50% of the income, on the average of the income of farmers, 50% ang mawawala. Now, without the tariffication, just doing the same thing today, di mataas ang presyo ng bilihin, ito yung kinikita ng farmers at ng rice industry. The rice industry is roughly 330 billion in value. Okay? The rice tariffication, the reduction in prices of consumers, the margin of your importers and traders, in effect, yun ang kukunin mo sa rice farmer dito. Okay? That is the equivalent. Okay? Ulitin ko lang. Yung reduction in price for the consumer, the margin of the importer and the trader. Okay? The tariffication, the 35% na gobyerno naman ang kikita. Yan ang kinukuha natin sa farmers natin. Okay? Now, numerous studies show as well that depending on how much we will import, and chances are today on the average you're probably importing 1.5 million. And it is very possible that these imports will double. Okay? If, for example, the collection of government is 20 billion and not 10, aren't we shortchanging the farmers? Kung ang koleksyon ng gobyerno ay 20 billion from this tariffication, bakit 10 lang ang ibabalik sa farmer? That is the main point, Mr. President. So at the appropriate time, we can have this debate and make proposals. We have proposals. We have options here that we would like to provide our members of the Senate with options on this issue, Mr. President. I don't mind having a 6-year period window. That way, we can review it as well. Na may sunset clause. But I think we will be shortchanging our farmers, and I'm sure that that is not the intention of the sponsor or many of us here, na we give them the raw end of the deal, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Yes.
the prediction that the projected tariff would be around more than 20 billion, they have proven it wrong, and that is an old study. So the projection is around 8 to 12 billion.
Okay,
per
8 to
year.
12 billion for how many sacks of rice?
10% of our 1.2
Okay, but even that, Mr.
million
President,
metric tons.
okay, I'm willing to make a wager in this bill as well. Halimbawa, o sige, kung 10 billion lang yan, there is a proposal here. This is how we will spend it.
Yes.
Right? What if mas malaki ang koleksyon? Let's say 20 or 12 or 15. I can put a proposal here as well na dito naman gastusin above the 10.
Yeah, we
Halimbawa.
can make that proposal, Mr.
Correct.
President.
Now, at the appropriate time, since I know that we will have a break in the meantime, we will propose also a compensation to our farmers. Okay? Kasi I agree with the productivity enhancement fund for farmers, but that will take time. In the meantime, tapa ka agad, immediately, yung magsasaka natin, Mr. President. And that's why I'm saying that there must be some form of compensation. I'm not taking away the 10 billion how it is being appropriated in the bill. We will just suggest others if the collection is beyond the 10 billion, which I expect it to be, Mr. President. So, since there's a request of the majority leader to suspend in the meantime,
Yes, Mr. President.
I'm willing to suspend in the meantime, Mr. President.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right, Majority
Thank you,
Leader.
Mr. President. Mr. President, we move to suspend consideration of the measure.
Any objection? Consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have a number of third reading bills for approval. I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 6129. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 6129.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 6129, an act establishing the Lanao del Norte Sports Training Center to be located in the municipality of Tubod, province of Lanao del Norte, and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 6129 is approved on third reading.
Just for the record, Mr. President, for all these third reading measures, copies were distributed to the members complying with the 3-day rule of the Constitution. Just for the record. Mr. President, Senator Pacquiao would like to make a manifestation on the last bill we approved, Mr. President.
Senator Pacquiao is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will agree that we need to prioritize the development of sports in the grassroots level. Mr. President, I would like to thank all our esteemed colleagues, especially our Senate President, the Majority Leader, and minority Leader for supporting this swift passage of Senate Bill number 1712 that seeks to establish the Sarangani Sports Training Center, as well as House Bill number 6129 that seeks to establish the Lanao del Norte Sports Training Center. As chairman of your Committee on Sports, I would like to relay the gratitude of all our young people and promising athletes who will benefit from these measures. Together, we will continue to push for the holistic development of our people's competence and character. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7166. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion approved.
Mr. President, I move to vote on third reading House Bill number 7166.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7166, an act converting the Cabasalan Institute of Technology in the municipality of Cabasalan, province of Zamboanga, Sibugay, into the Zamboanga Sibugay Polytechnic Institute and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7166 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 7264. I so move, Mr. President.
Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 7264.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7264, an act establishing the Cordillera State Institute of Technology Education, or CSITE, integrating the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, TESDA training centers, and TESDA supervised state-run technical vocational institutions, TVIs, in the Cordillera Administrative Region and appropriating funds therefor. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7264 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 5152. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 5152.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 5152, an act requiring higher education institutions to report participation and program support expenditures in all college athletic programs. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 5152 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7784. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 7784.
Secretary will read titled measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7784, anak creating a high school for the arts in the province of Bataan to be known as the Bataan High School for the Arts and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 7784 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, we move to resume consideration House Bill number 416.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 416.
Secretary will read titled measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 416, an act allowing home economics graduate to teach home economics subjects and home economics related technical vocational subjects in all public and private elementary and secondary educational institutions respectively, consistent with Section 8 of Republic Act number 10533 or the Enhanced Basic Education Act of 2013. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 416 approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 7713. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we approve on third reading House Bill number 7713.
Secretary will read titled measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7713, an act changing the name of Inoyonan High School in Barangay Inoyonan, Municipality of Bula, Province of Camarines Sur, to Felipe P. Panton High School. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 7713 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7714. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 7714.
Secretary will conduct a roll call vote after reading the title.
House Bill number 7714, an act changing the name of Tawan-Tawan Elementary School in Barangay Tawan-Tawan, Baguio District, Davao City to Rosalia Aglay Ayag Elementary School. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7714 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 7767. I so move.
Any objection? Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 7767.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7767, an act separating the Siksikan National High School Annex in Barangay Santa Monica, Puerto Princesa City, Province of Palawan from the Siksikan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Santa Monica National High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 7767 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of House Bill number 7768. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move to approve on third reading House Bill number 7768.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7768, an act separating the Bokbok National High School, Kiara Annex in Barangay Kiara, Municipality of Don Carlos, Province of Bukidnon, from the Bokbok National High School, converting it into an independent high school to be known as Kiara National High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Gilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7768, it's approved in third reading.
Mr. President, move to resume consideration House Bill number 7769. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, move to approve on third reading House Bill number 7769.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7769, an act establishing a national high school in Barangay Pinayag, Municipality of Cayapa, Province of Nueva Vizcaya, to be known as Pinayag National High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Gilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7769 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 7775. I so move.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, move to approve on third reading House Bill number 7775.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7775, an act converting the Bayog National High School in Barangay Hayagan, Municipality of Bayog, Province of Zamboanga del Sur, into a National Technical Vocational High School to be known as Bayog National Technical Vocational High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7775 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move to resume consideration House Bill number 7776. So
Any
moved.
objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 7776.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7776, an act separating the Dabubu High School Annex in Barangay Sinawangan Sur, Municipality of San Agustin, Province of Isabela, from the Dabubu High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Southeastern Region High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Gilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7776 approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we approve, we resume consideration rather of House Bill number 7777.
Any objection? Motion approved.
Mr. President, move to approve the same measure, House Bill number
Secretary will read the
7777.
title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7777, an act separating the Cabangahan National High School, Cordova National High School Extension in Barangay Dayas, Municipality of Cordova, Province of Cebu, from the Cabangahan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Cordova National High School and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 7777 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 7733. I so move.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion approved.
Mr. President, move to approve on third reading House Bill number 7733.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 7733, an act converting the Dr. Emilio B. Espinosa Sr. Memorial State College of Agriculture and Technology in the Municipality of Mandaon, Province of Masbate, into a state university to be known as Dr. Emilio B. Espinosa Sr. Masbate State University and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call vote, the Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 7733 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 5203. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, move that we vote on third reading House Bill number 5203. So moved.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 5203, an act moving the date of Katarman Day to August 30 of every year, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9203, entitled An Act Declaring the 15th day of August of every year as a special non-working holiday, the municipality of Katarman, province of Camiguin, to be known as Katarman Day. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 5203 is approved on third reading.
Mr. President, move to resume consideration House Bill number 5639. So moved.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, move to approve on third reading House Bill number 5639.
Secretary will read the title of the measure, conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 5639, an act declaring October 16 of every year a special non-working holiday in the city of Calbayog, province of Samar, in commemoration of its Charter Day anniversary, to be known as the Calbayog City Charter Day. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 5639 is approved in third reading.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration House Bill number 5638.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
President, move to approve on third reading House Bill number 5638.
Secretary will read the title of the measure and conduct a roll call vote.
House Bill number 5638, an act declaring November 28 of every year a special non-working holiday in the municipality of Santa Margarita, province of Samar, in commemoration of its founding anniversary, to be known as the Santa Margarita Foundation Day. Roll call vote. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatchalian, Gordon, Onasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Legarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Soto III.
With 16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention, House Bill 5638 is approved on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we're in receipt of bicameral conference committee reports. On the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6741, entitled Zamboanga Peninsula Polytechnic State University. I move to consider the said measure, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, upon the request of the chairperson that the Senate BICAM panel be, the report, his explanation of the report be inserted into the records.
Consent of the chamber.
Local.
Motion is approved.
Mr. President, move to adopt and ratify bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6741. I so move.
Any objection? Chair hears none. The bicameral conference committee report on House Bill 6741 is adopted and ratified.
Mr. President, we are in receipt of another bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6065. This is entitled the Biliran Province State University. Mr. President, I move to consider the said bicameral.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, upon the request of the chairperson, that the records of his sponsorship speech be inserted into the records of the Senate.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, move to adopt and ratify bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill number 6065. So moved.
Any objection? Hearing none, bicameral conference committee report on the disagreeing votes on House Bill 6065 is adopted and ratified.
Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to proceed with the Senate President's designation of the Senate conferees to the bicameral conference committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 2031 and House Bill number 5236. This is the rank classification of the Philippine National Police.
The following members are hereby designated as conferees on the part of the Senate. Senator Lacson as chairperson and Villanueva, Gatchalian, Honasan, and Trillanes support as members.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move to resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1826. This is the Security of Tenure Act, Mr. President.
1826.
1826.
Any objection? Chair hears none. Motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Joel Villanueva, and to interpolate Senator Sherwin Gatchalian.
Senator Joel Villanueva is recognized, and to Senator Sherwin Gatchalian to interpolate.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Is the sponsor willing to receive some clarificatory questions, Mr. President?
Willingly, Mr. President, especially from the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I just have some basic clarificatory questions, Mr. President. First one is, Mr. President, under this proposal, are on-call workers and seasonal employment still allowed under this proposal, Mr. President? On-call meaning some of the businesses, especially restaurants, especially caterers, Mr. President. Yung mga caterers po, wala naman regular waiters, and they only hire waiters kung meron pong events, kung meron pong weddings, and they are on call, no? And they are being called whenever there is a job for them or my events. Are these type of employment jobs still allowed under this proposal, Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President. The distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela is correct. They are allowed, and we don't want to meddle with the flexibility of the business firms to continue hiring seasonal workers, even on-call workers, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I want to focus on on-call. Well, I think the industry calls it on-call, no? But in this law, I think they're called project employment, Mr. President. On the on-call, Mr. President, some of them might work just one day, some of them might work just once a week. What will be the treatment to this type of employees, Mr. President?
I'm sorry, Mr. President. The question is what happens with day-to-day workers. Is that correct,
Mr. President, I'll give a very specific example, Mr. President. There's a caterer, and normally yung waiters niya ho on call. These waiters, will they be regular employees?
Yes, Mr. President. If they are on call on a regular basis, but again, we'd like to put on record that we wanted to implement. We still wanted to implement the no work, no policy method, Mr. President.
So, Mr. President, the caterer will now regularize the employees, the waiters for this matter. They will be regularized. They will be a regular employee of that caterer. The waiters that used to be on call.
Yes, Mr. President, but not every day, Mr. President. Depending on the need, depending on the duration of his or her work, Mr. President. Because if he is on call for example, Mr. President, for more than 2 years, 3 years, Mr. President, cumulative, Mr. President, then he should be part of the regular on-call worker, Mr. President. That's what we intend to do, Mr. President.
And when you say regular on-call, Mr. President, the caterer now is mandated to pay for the benefits, let's say the SSS, Pag-ibig, PhilHealth.
Under the law, Mr. President, the current law, even without passing this particular measure that we are discussing, they are supposed to pay, Mr. President.
Okay, and that will, Mr. President, and when you say regularized, they will now be part of the company and a regular employee of that company. Because a lot of these caterers, especially the small caterers, Mr. President, ano sila eh, literally, no, they just call the waiters, they come in, and the transaction is purely on a
day-to-day basis.
On a day-to-day basis, Mr.
Yes, we
President.
agree, Mr. President, but we wanted to call them regular because, again, as we pointed out earlier, Mr. President, even without passing this particular measure, the law mandates the caterer to pay for their SS, for their field health, in the duration of their work, Mr. President.
Okay. Mr. President, in the, I don't know if you have the data, Mr. President, for small and medium enterprises, no, especially a lot of these small companies, how many employees are treated as on call, or how many are I guess contractual, no, in nature, Mr. President, for small and medium lang po?
Sa Bambi, Mr. President, walang disaggregation, Mr. President.
Okay, so we cannot determine.
Yes, Mr. President. And remember, dun sa Bambi law din, even when you talk about minimum wage, they are exempted, Mr. President.
Okay. Mr. President, in between, no, for example, they're just hired once a week, no? And a lot of them are hired actually on the weekends kasi yung po yung pinakamaraming events. So during the week, pwede ba silang maging, since they are regular, no, regular employees of this caterer, can they be hired by another caterer?
Yes, definitely, Mr. President, because they are seasonal worker, seasonal regular worker of the caterer for the weekend, Mr. President. So they can also work and entertain another job, Mr. President.
And the caterer number 2, what is the treatment to that waiter, to that same waiter? Will that be a regular employee?
Same, Mr. President. It will be computed on the number of days na pinapasok niya, Mr. President.
But the treatment is also a regular employee, meaning he's in the regular payroll of that caterer number 2?
Mr. President, as mentioned earlier, yung pong batas na umiiral ngayon, yung PhilHealth, yung SS, yung 13th month, it will be depending on the number of days na pinagtrabahuhan po niya, Mr. President, even if he is a seasonal worker.
So in other words, the same employee will have 2 regular employers.
Mr. President, kung saan po yung mas maraming oras niya at if he exceeded the number of, for example, more than 6 months, cumulative, dun po siya magiging regular.
Okay, Mr. President. I'm just a cursory reading of the law. I'm just raising some real-life situations,
That's
Mr.
very
President.
helpful, Mr. President, and we appreciate
ito yung mga
the
na-observe
question.
ko in the market, Mr.
Yes.
President, and I just want to make sure that the law applies to this type of
Yes,
situation,
Mr. President. Thank you. We appreciate
Mr.
it.
President, I also saw in the law that in section 106, or Article 106, labor-only contracting is prohibited, and one of the, I guess one of the qualifications for that prohibition is the quote-unquote directly related to the principal business, Mr. President. And Mr. President, the directly related word, directly related, is quite different in different types of businesses, Mr. President. For example, again, no, going back to that caterer, is the waiter a directly related, directly related to the business, Mr. President?
If it's the catering, Mr. President, definitely, Mr. President, it's directly related.
Okay, Mr. President. How about the HR, Human Resource Office? Is that a directly related to that business?
Yeah, yes, Mr. President, because they're the ones managing the employees. But I get the point of the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela, because there are intricacies from different industries, Mr. President, and our goal is to ensure that not all jobs or workers in a particular business setting will be contracted, Mr. President. That is our goal. That is our main goal.
Okay. Mr. President, going back to that catering business, no? In most cases, the catering business hires a outsource the human resource aspect. No? The human resource aspect is the human resource consultant is the one who computes for the payroll, computes for the other things of the employees directly hired by the catering business. Ngayon, pag yung HR consultant will now be or is now categorized as directly related to the principal business. Therefore, that caterer will now be mandated to hire that HR component. No? And that HR component will now be part of the cost of that HR, of that catering business, Mr. President. So who now determines whether a component of that business is directly related or not directly related, Mr. President?
That's a very good question, Mr. President. I think if you look at the SEC registration, for instance, Mr. President, you would easily find out ano ba talaga yung nature of the business, Mr. President. But perhaps there are also some gray areas that you might ask because there are some industries na more intricate. And we wanted to leave it with the industry tripartite council, Mr. President, to distinguish and determine so that, again, Mr. President, ma-determine what functions would need to be contracted out or ano yung directly related o hindi para masiguro din natin, Mr. President, na hindi din natin nasusukol yung pong growth ng ating business industries.
Mr. President, what I understand from the sponsor is yung what is directly related will be determined by the industry tripartite council.
Yes, Mr. President.
And this council...
The IRR, Mr. President, that is our goal. But again, Mr. President, yung goal natin, we wanted to put that on record. Ayaw natin na lahat na lang ng klase ng trabaho ay kino-contract out. Kasi kung klaro po doon sa SEC registration nila na ito yung nature of business, then we can easily determine, Mr. President, which ones are directly related and which ones are not.
Correct. Because, Mr. President, I am... my initial reaction to this directly related word or directly related requirement is it's quite subjective. No? And who will now determine what is directly related to a business or not directly related to a business?
Mr. President, and that's the reason why we wanted the tripartite industry council to step up and assess the different industries, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I talked to some HR practitioners in the field, and apparently this tripartite industrial council is being implemented now. No? But I think what they did is they have different tripartite councils for different industries.
From different industries.
And apparently some of the tripartite councils cannot agree. No? Some of them would want lahat regular. Some of them, hindi sila nagkaka-agree between the business and the labor groups. Who now is the ultimate arbiter in cases they cannot agree? No? Because I understand that in some industries right now, they couldn't agree what jobs are directly related, what jobs are not directly related. So who now becomes the arbiter, Mr. President?
Thank you for raising that particular issue, distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela. What this tripartite industry council it operates based on consensus, Mr. President. And kung wala pong consensus, the Secretary of Labor would come into the picture and determine, Mr. President, basically para mawala yung tie, Mr. President.
But, Mr. President, I don't see that in the law. Will that be...
Definitely, Mr. President, in the IRR, we will make sure that it's part of the IRR. But if the distinguished gentleman would like to introduce some amendments, we'll be happy to accommodate.
Because I think, Mr. President, is a very important component, and that becomes the working technical working group for this matter that determines which jobs should be directly hired, which jobs should be outsourced, Mr. President.
We agree, Mr. President, and we submit, Mr. President.
Mr. President, in this day and age, outsourcing has become a very cost-effective method in different businesses. No? And in fact, outsourcing has evolved a lot. A very good example will be the delivery services of fast food chains. So, Mr. President, before, yung mga fast food chains, they would hire their own delivery boys, but at this day and age, you can actually outsource it to another company because they have economies of scale, they can buy spare parts at a cheaper price, and they have it's more efficient for them. No? How do we treat outsourcing, Mr. President? And this continuously evolve. The jobs right now that is considered regular, tomorrow or next year can be outsourced. No? So how do you now accommodate that flexibility and dynamism in businesses, Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we believe that outsourcing is a worldwide recognized scheme, and we respect the and support, Mr. President, yung growth ng economy because of that, but not to the extent that our workers will be abused. That's the main reason why we are pushing this particular measure, and I think the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela will agree the importance of having security of tenure. However, Mr. President, we wanted to put on record that job contracting will still be around, and we wanted to make sure that this is being protected and being regulated properly, Mr. President.
Mr. President, again, who determines which components of a business can be outsourced and which should be directly hired by the business?
The tripartite, Mr. President. Okay. If there are, as mentioned earlier, if it's not clear whether or not this is let me give a good example. For instance, what you were mentioning and raising a while ago in a delivery industry, Mr. President. For example, in a fast food chain, when you put up a fast food chain, ang main goal mo is pagkakitaan yung binebenta mong hamburger, for instance, or spaghetti. And then, all of a sudden, you tried entertaining deliveries. But if you look at your balance sheet, is it substantial yung kinikita dun sa delivery or not? If it is substantial, then it's probably be a directly related work, Mr. President. But even if it is, Mr. President, we don't want to assume, Mr. President, all these industries, and that's why we wanted to make sure that there's the tripartite to distinguish, Mr. President. But for example, in a fast food chain, Mr. President, I don't think the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela will agree also that the cook, those who prepare the burgers and the fries, will be contracted, Mr. President.
I agree, Mr. President. Then, Mr. President, therefore, the tripartite council becomes a very powerful entity because the council will now determine which jobs can be outsourced, which jobs should be directly hired, which jobs are directly related.
It will be, Mr. President, a consultative process, Mr. President, because again, as mentioned earlier, we don't want na yung mga industries natin hindi mag-grow, Mr. President, just because of this, and we wanted to make sure na again, the main purpose is to take good care of our workers na matagal na pong naaabuso because of this 555 scheme and the evils of ENDO, Mr. President.
Mr. President, on a later date, I would like to propose to include the tripartite council because it becomes a very strong entity, and I think that entity should be included in the law just to make sure that the rules and how they operate are very clear in this proposal, Mr. President.
Definitely, Mr. President, we'll welcome the suggestions and inputs from the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela.
Mr. President, lastly, what is the reason for probationary employment, Mr. President? What is the reason why there is probationary employment in the law, Mr. President.
That's part of the for the business sector to determine the qualification of a particular worker, Mr. President.
And Mr. President, in that 6 months probationary period, Mr. President, I understand that the benefits being received by a regular employee and a probationary employee, are they the same, or is there a discrepancy, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, it's actually the same under the PhilHealth law, under the SSS law, under the Pag-ibig law, and even the 13-month pay law, Mr. President.
They're the same, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
But
but let me point out that the no work, no pay continue to apply, Mr. President, even if you are a seasonal worker or a project-based worker, Mr. President.
But Mr. President, to transition from a probationary to a regular employee, what is the process to transition to a regular employee, Mr. President?
First, Mr. President, your performance being evaluated, and second, I think, if I'm not mistaken, when you reach the more than 6 months, Mr. President, of working, you become regular, Mr. President.
Okay. The performance, Mr. President, I think you made mention that one of the requirements is for the employee to be performing or to be worthy of being a regular employee. But who determines that whether employee is performing up to standards or not, no? Mr. President?
It is indicated, Mr. President, in the contract. So there is a particular standard that you need to perform and you need to be able to deliver, Mr. President, so that you will be assessed with justice, Mr. President.
But Mr. President, is that performance standard regulated or prescribed by the government? Because
no, Mr.
I
President,
understand
no,
in
no.
practice, Mr. President.
It's the prerogative of the management, Mr. President.
I understand in practice, Mr. President, notwithstanding the benefits being given, but one of the reasons why unscrupulous businesses use a probationary feature of this law, or the labor law for that matter, is to prevent the employees from being regular. Because if you become regular, you're now entitled to other benefits such as pay increase, retirement pay, sick leave and vacation leave, monetizing the sick leave and vacation leave. These are the other things that the companies try to save, you know.
Skirt, Mr. President.
Try to skirt or try to skirt the law. But Mr. President, if the requirement for performance or the gauge of performance will not be regulated and will be left to the companies, then how are we going to assure the employees that they will be gauged, or they will be evaluated with fairness and Mr. President?
Mr. President, ito pong mga bagay ito i-discuss even before they are hired, Mr. President. So, to begin with, the employee would be able to see, Mr. President, if this is acceptable on his behalf, Mr. President.
Okay, so it will be the performance standard will now be subject of a mutual agreement with
Yes,
the
Mr. President.
employer
Yes,
and
Mr.
the
President.
employee, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay, because one of my top of mind issue, Mr. President, is really some of the companies use this provision and the arbitrariness of evaluating the employee to circumvent the benefits or added benefits entitled to the employee, Mr. President. And without really scrutinizing that performance evaluation, it becomes arbitrary, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, we agree. And it's good that the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela raised this, because, Mr. President, what if you are only asked to open doors or clean the carpet, Mr. President? I don't know what kind of performance evaluation system is being implemented. But again, Mr. President, it's the prerogative of the management and the business firm to
Mr. President,
implement this, Mr. President.
the project employment, the project-based employment will also undergo the same performance evaluation scheme, Mr. President. So if you're a waiter
Yes.
on call, you have to be evaluated before you become a regular
Yes,
employee,
Mr. President, the same process, Mr. President.
All right. Mr. President, that's about it for my clarificatory questions, Mr. President. And at a later date, Mr. President, I will suggest to the good
Yes.
sponsor some concepts that hopefully will improve the proposal, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We appreciate the insights and questions raised by the distinguished gentleman from Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Coco Pimentel is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the good sponsor could allow further clarificatory but supportive questioning from this representation, Mr. President.
Gladly, Mr. President, especially from the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro City.
Nung tayo po yung nagtapos nung last time, sabi ko na daanan ko yung mga position papers na natanggap
Yes,
ko.
Mr. President.
Kung pwede natin pag-usapan yung mga punto na nakalagay dun sa mga position papers. Okay lang
Opo.
po ba, Mr. President?
Gladly, Mr. President.
For example po, ito po isang position paper. Section 2 of our measure prohibits labor-only contracting. According to them, this provision is tantamount to abolishing all forms of job contracting. And nag-switch.
Labor-only contract, not job contracting.
Kaya
Mr. President.
nag-switch nga po ng terminology, kaya
Opo.
sagutin po natin.
Yes, yes.
Because, kasi nga, all forms of contracting and subcontracting of work by the employer under Article 106 of the Labor Code are directly related to the main business of the employer, even if such may be unnecessary, incidental, or not integral to the main business of the principal, simply because what is contracted out pertains to the work of the principal. So, ibig nga sabihin, sa definition natin ng labor-only contracting, kahit anong trabaho na isubject mo sa kontrata, pwedeng ma-argue na kaya mo nga binibigay yan sa isang contractor kasi directly related yan sa principal business mo. Yan po yung argumento doon.
Again, Mr. President,
Excuse me, Mr. Sponsor. And then, baka daw masagot itong objection na ito, masagot if ipasok natin ang definition ng legitimate job contracting under Department Order 174. What is the response of
that's the last part, Mr. President. I'm sorry I didn't get it. The last part of your...
The bill failed to state what constitutes legitimate job contracting. That's the point. So
we have it in the licensing section, Mr. President. That is
in section
107, Mr. President.
Yeah,
Article 107, Mr. President.
Pages 2 and 3 of the bill. So yan po yung sagot natin. No, babalik tayo sa una nating interpellation po, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President.
Ang bawal talaga, gamitin natin ng tamang terminology, is
labor-only contracting.
And yet, itong bill natin ay pinapayagan pa rin natin
labor contracting. Job contracting, sorry, Mr. President.
So ganun, para nga hindi makakalito. So, ang ating pinagbabawal ay labor-only contracting.
Yes.
Pero pinapayagan pa rin ang tatawagin nating job contracting.
Yes. And it is in Section 3, Mr. President, of the proposed measure, Article 107, Mr. President.
Ngayon, ang tanong, at sa tingin ko na tanong din ito ni Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, yung principal business of the contractee or the employer, paano po yun saan po hahanapin yun? Paano malalaman yun? Tapos, paano kung mayroong dispute na hindi naman niya principal business yan? O,
Mr. President, gusto nating puntahan muli yung rehistro noong negosyo sa kanilang SEC registration. Makikita ho kaagad natin doon ano ba talaga yung nature of business na kanilang papasukan. At kung ito naman ay hahantong doon sa mga gray areas, Mr. President, na kung saan ay hindi klaro kung ito ba ay directly related o hindi, nais po nating mag-step up ang tripartite Industrial Council upang sa ganoon sila ang magdetermina. And this is a working process, Mr. President. At malaman natin kung ito ba ay papasok doon sa directly related o hindi, Mr. President.
Yan po binanggit niyo po na Tripartite Industrial Council. Existing na po yan. Diba?
Yes, Mr. President. There's a law, Mr. President, that created the Tripartite Industrial Council, Mr. President.
So, ang ating panukalang batas, hindi ginagalaw yon, tama?
Hindi po, hindi po ginagalaw.
So, pwede po natin malaman ano ba ang mandato ng Tripartite Industrial Council at bakit ito ang katawan or body na magre-resolve dun sa ganung klaseng dispute?
Sapagkat dito po ay well represented ang lahat ng stakeholders, Mr. President.
At ito ba'y present all over the country? Paano naman ano yung convenience naman ng taong nagrereklamo?
Yes, Mr. President. On a national level, present po ito. On a regional level, Mr. President.
On a regional level, so ibig sabihin nun sa kada capital city siguro or town at
sa 16 regions po of this country, Mr. President.
Nasa regional center siya. So most likely sa regional center, doon po pwedeng magreklamo. Kunyari, may isang na-hire under
Mr. President, may I just point out, if I may, that this is not a dispute settlement mechanism.
Okay.
This is more of a policy, consultative, Mr. President, ang Tripartite Industrial Council.
Hindi, kasi ako po, Mr. President, pumupunta na ako sa actual situation. Sa definition kasi natin, kung ang worker na kinuha ni recruiter, gamitin ko lang yung term na recruiter po, ay gumagawa ng trabaho na directly related sa principal business noong negosyo kung saan siya in-endorse, that is prohibited labor-only
contracting. For example, Mr. President, you are a bank and you are getting your worker from a recruitment agency. Yung mga tellers mo, Mr. President, obviously, ikaw ay banko, then you're supposed to hire your workers, your tellers, Mr. President, directly, Mr. President.
Kaya, so ang ating pong definition kasi, kailangan words ang ginagamit natin, sometimes general words. Paano ngayon, pag-apply na sa case-to-case basis po, dapat, convenient and practical and accessible when there is now a dispute where kung pasok ba siya sa Section 2 of, sa definition ng Section 2. So, saan tatakbo si employee, si worker, na ang pakiramdam niya, na isahan ako principal business ito pero so labor
regional offices, Mr. President, ng DOLE.
At doon nga po ba sa Tripartite Industrial Council, Mr. President?
Hindi po, Mr. President. Sa regional offices lang po ng Department of Labor and Employment. Hindi na po kailangan yung Tripartite Industrial Council para ireklamo po ito.
Hindi ba tayo mapupuno ng reklamo dyan kaya?
Well, hindi naman po, because even right now, Mr. President, it's an existing mechanism for the workers to file complaints. And that's the reason, Mr. President, why we are pushing for this particular measure, because there are a lot of ambiguities, Mr. President, a lot of problems being encountered, no less than the Department of Labor and Employment, Mr. President. That's why DOLE is in full support of this particular measure.
Existing law, Mr. President, already defines labor-only contracting. Why did in existing law, right?
Yes, Mr. President.
Why did the law define labor-only contracting in existing law? Was it also to prohibit it?
Definitely, Mr. President, para ma-strengthen ho natin yung ating posisyon na ito'y bawal. Yung pong pagre-recruit lang, pagsusupply lang ng worker, yung pong lahat na lang ng klase ng worker ay kino-contract out, at yung pong control naman ay nandoon sa principal, wala po dun sa contractee. So ito po gusto natin palakasin sapagkat even if you look at the history, Mr. President, for example, the Supreme Court decisions, Mr. President, ang dami po, no? The same issue pero iba-iba po yung interpretasyon. Yung pong mga nakaraang panahon na kung saan nagkaroon po tayo ng pagdinig, yung pong issue ng NutriAsia, yung po ng issue ng PLDT, Mr. President, the business firms actually affirmed that they wanted to submit, Mr. President. It's just that there are instances na nakikita nila na pwede silang makalusot at pwede naman po at sa tingin nila legal yung kanilang ginagawa. And that has become a big problem, Mr. President. And in fact, yung alam po ng ating kasamahan na the gentleman from Cagayan de Oro, how long it takes, Mr. President, dito po mabigat na pagkakaso at kung gaano katagal na nare-resolba ang mga kasong ito. And ito po yung dahilan kung bakit gusto natin maklaro ito at matulungan din hindi lamang ang Department of Labor and Employment in implementing this particular measure, but also yung pong part ng judiciary, Mr. President.
Because I have noticed that Article 106, which we are amending, of the Labor Code, which are amending, we will actually be introducing a new first sentence of Article 106. Labor-only contracting is prohibited. Nakasulat dyan. So, talagang kinaklaro natin. So, ang ibig sabihin nun, yung existing law pala hindi klaro. O, kaya talagang may one sentence doon, naklaro. Ngayon, tapos meron po tayong mga in-insert dito ng mga salita, meron tayong mga dinilit. Paano po natin na-improve yung? Kasi sabi niyo po, Mr. Sponsor, bawal na talaga ang labor-only contracting. Ito sa ating panukalang batas, meron pang introductory sentence, labor-only contracting is prohibited. Tapos ito na yung body na 106 na inamend natin. Ano pong improvements ngayon para malaman po ng lahat? Paano po natin mas pinaganda ngayon ang pagbabawal sa labor-only contracting by changing some words in the existing law, especially on the definition of labor-only contracting, which already exists in law right now.
Thank you, Mr. President. The current labor-only contracting test of substantial capital or investment and performance of work or job directly related to the principal business are now two separate indicators, Mr. President. Under the proposal, yung LOC o yung labor-only contracting is present when the contractor's employees are performing jobs which are directly related to the principal business of the contractee. Regardless na, Mr. President, whether or not you have a substantial capital. Because dito ho sila umiikot, napakadali sabihin na may substantial capital ako, pero ang ginagawa lang po nila ay nagsusupply lang ng worker, Mr. President. Under this measure, Mr. President, the requirements to establish legitimate, independent job contracting is focused on the activity which should not be mere recruitment and supply of workers, but contracting of the performance or completion of job, work, or service. Pangalawa po, Mr. President, yung exercise of the rights of a legitimate employer with control over his or her workers in carrying out the job, work, or service contracted out. And yung pangatlo po, yung type or nature of job, work, or service contracted, which should not be directly related to the principal business of the contractee. Ano nga po ba yung rationale of this proposal? Mr. President, this definition, as favorably endorsed by DOLE, kasi mismong DOLE na nagsasabi, the proposed amendment to the current language of the Labor Code will simplify. It will simplify, Mr. President, the interpretation, implementation, and enforcement of the prohibition of on labor-only contracting and curb practices that circumvent the prohibition na binabanggit po natin at ni-raise din po kanina ni Senator Gatchalian. Kasi most of the labor-only contracting cases pending on appeal, Mr. President, are grounded on the argument that the contractors are not labor-only contracting because they have or possess substantial capitalization, citing Supreme Court cases, etc., Mr. President. Now, based on the proposed definition, manpower supply or placement of workers who perform activities that are directly related to the business of the contractee is labor-only contracting, even if the contractor has substantial capital or investments or is exercising control over the workers. I believe, Mr. President, this will help curb the abuses and address the prevalence of labor-only contracting, particularly in manufacturing, wholesale and retail trade, and accommodation and food service industry. And that's why I believe this is the main reason why the President himself certified this particular measure as urgent, Mr. President, because he believes that this will address the problem or the evils of contractualization, Mr. President.
Kaya po itong nasa page 2, line 8, nabago po yung salitang and at pinalitan ng or. Ito po ay intentionaling ginawa.
Yes.
At dahil dito ay masihigpit ngayon ang rules laban sa labor-only contracting.
Mas gusto po nating sabihin mas klaro, Mr. President. Mas klaro para
mas lalawak na ang sasakupin ng labor-only contracting. Tama po ba 'yon?
Hindi naman po lalawak.
Kasi
ito po ay mas kaklaruhin kung ano ba talaga ang labor-only contracting.
Kasi kung dati and siya, so kailangan wala kang kapital at kailangan
directly related.
Nagbibigay ka ng trabahante sa employer na directly related sa principal business niya ang ginagawa niya and ano pa, at tatlo yun, di ba?
Yung control po, Mr.
Yung
President.
control at
sino ho yung may control para kung sino po yung may control, siya po yung magre-regularize ng worker.
Ngayon yung pagbago ng and sa or, malaking tulong po yun sa ating kausa nga na pagbawalan.
Sa enforcement po, lalong-lalo na po, Mr. President, sa enforcement.
Okay, dumating na siguro ang time na kasi kailangan na po tayong ito lang po isang tanong para po maging basis sa next future questioning ko. Ito po ba'y applicable itong ating pag-prohibit sa labor-only contracting applicable sa mga colleges and universities? Kasi ang kanila pong claim, iba po ang sitwasyon nila sa mga ordinary employers. Kaya kung applicable po sa kanila, I will now discuss their position paper in future interpellation.
Yung non-academic practitioners, Mr. President, it applies. But dun po sa academic, it doesn't because mayroon pong sarili silang panuntunan na sinusunod. Ito po yung Manual of Regulation for Private and Higher Institutions, Mr. President.
Yan ba ay kapantay na labor code?
There's a law kasi, Mr. President, on that.
Katabla
doon po sa mga non-practitioners, pwede po. Pero doon po sa
academic personnel, iba ang rules. Sabi natin,
yes,
sana academic. Tibali, kung pwede po, Mr. President, we will just discuss
yes,
this
Mr. President, just to give you, ito pong sa educational institutions, no, yung RA 7722, ito po yung sumasaklaw dun sa Higher Education Act of 94, yung BP 322 or the Education Act of 1982, ito pong RA 9155, yung Governance of Basic Education Act of 2001. Hindi po natin ito pinakikialaman, Mr. President.
Yes. With the permission of the two gentlemen on the floor, perhaps we can discuss this more freely and exhaustively when there are no time constraints. But at the moment, the majority leader, I believe,
Mr. President, I'm suspending my interpellation. Thank you,
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the distinguished gentleman from Cagayan de Oro.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the measure.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just for the record, Senator Legarda has a privileged speech on the illegal wildlife trade, and she would like to move that we place it on record as it's spread into the records as if it is read to the records, Mr. President.
Any objection? There being none, yes, we place it on record.
Mr. President, move for the additional reference of business.
There is a third additional reference of business. The Secretary will proceed.
Third additional reference of business, message from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 8 October 2018, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 8302 entitled, An Act Granting More Electric and Power Corporation a franchise to establish, operate, and maintain for commercial purposes and in the public interest a distribution system for the conveyance of electric power to the end users in the city of Iloilo, province of Iloilo.
Referred to the Committee on Public Services.
House number 5111 entitled, An Act Establishing a Land Transportation Office, LTO District Office in the 2nd District of Cagayan de Oro City and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services and Finance.
House number 8230 entitled, An Act Creating a Barangay to be known as Barangay 201, Zone 20 in the city of Pasay, Metropolitan Manila.
Committees on Local Government, Electoral Reforms.
House number 8240 entitled, An Act Revising the Charter of the City of Baguio.
To the Committee on Local Government.
And House number 8254 entitled, An Act Establishing the Bayang Historical Park and Convention Center in the Municipality of Bayang, Province of Lanao del Sur and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Education and Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just a manifestation. For the information of the body, we have a standing resolution. It's resolution number 43, authorizing all regular standing committees, oversight committees, and special committees of the Senate to conduct hearing and meetings and consultations during the recess, during the break, Mr. President. So if our colleagues would like to continue working, Mr. President, they may do so. And finally, Mr. President, just for the record, would like to just put on the record that we have done extremely well since last August 28, Mr. President. Since last August 28, we passed 69 local measures, 34 national bills into law. That's a total of 103 measures enacted into third reading, and well, not all into passed into third reading, many of which were turned into law, such as the creation of the Department of Housing, universal health care, ease of doing business, I believe also tulong trabaho and OSH, occupational safety, many others, Mr. President. So we'd like to thank our colleagues, most especially the chairpersons of these committees, as well as the minority floor leader and the minority for supporting many of these measures. It was a bipartisan action between the Senate members, Mr. President. And we'd like to congratulate the Senate President that the Senate has the highest approval rating from all government agencies headed by our Senate President Tito Soto.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, sir.
With that, Mr. President, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, November 12, 2018. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of
Thank you.
Monday, November 12, 2018.